It is frustrating as a leftist, right? It's incredibly frustrating as a leftist to be continually surrounded by everyone else who hates Keir Starmer is a fucking idiotic right-winger who hates him for reasons that are totally false. And then we get the scandals that we've seen so far today, where, you know, everything that we knew, everything that we'd said about Keir Starmer for the last, 6 years now, had just been proven, entirely correct in terms of the people that he is related to politically, the people who he keeps his company with, the people who we'd been reporting on for this entire time as having been less than reputable individuals, shall we say. And the right wingers go, oh, I need to get rid of Keir Starmer because of all of these reasons that are totally untrue that I saw on my right wing slop accounts on Twitter. And now we're in the same camp as them, calling for him to resign immediately. It's very much the boy who cried resign at the moment, except we were the ones not saying it then who are saying it now. And we're getting chucked in with the same fucking lot as the weirdo rightoids. Actually, the 2738th time that we've been correct, Aiden, but that is a very good point. The left is Cassandra, cursed to be correct too early and to be completely ignored. So smug and vindicated, but also horrified and basically lost my faith in democracy. I mean, true. I mean, but then again, the whole point of the kind of the left-wing critique of bourgeois democracy is this is what it's like, right? Like, the central themes of leftists' critique of liberal bourgeois democracy is that it is not real democracy because it is solely democracy for the very richest, right? That has always been the case when it comes to liberal bourgeois democracy. There's a famous Lenin quote. The famous Lenin quote that democracy for the rich, that is the democracy of a bourgeois society, of a capitalist society. It's hard to keep count at times like this. So true. So true. It really is difficult to keep track. What would it take for a vote of no confidence? I think, well, again, it'll come down to the Labour Party. It'll come down to whether or not Labour MPs feel like that they can justify getting rid of him. Whether they have a challenger. Whether they have somebody with 80 names to challenge Keir Starmer for the leadership. You'd expect the only person who'd have the names would end up being Angela Rayner. Although it is very funny to me, on the subject of Angela Rayner, that slightly getting her tax affairs wrong was enough to get her out of the post of Deputy Leader of the Labour Party and her position as Deputy Prime Minister, and yet, Keir Starmer is still sticking around, having admitted to knowing that Peter Mandelson was good friends with international sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein at the time of his appointment as the ambassador to the United States. This outwardly political appointment they didn't even need to do. They didn't need to replace the ambassador to the United States. They didn't need to do this at all. There was already a well-qualified one that was well-liked by both the Biden and Trump administrations in post already. They didn't need to replace them, and they wanted to replace them with Peter Mandelson on McSweeney's request. What makes it even fucking worse, apparently Keir Starmer's first choice was fucking George Osborne. Apparently Keir Starmer is so in with the establishment, he wanted architect of mass death in this country, George Osborne, to be his first choice for ambassador to the United States. Absolutely incredible scenes. Incredible scenes. I know, right? 16 Jacob screams, right? It's so funny to me. When Bo Burnham talked about the pedophilic corporate elite, he wasn't joking. He wasn't joking. What did he know? What did he know? He asked and Mandy denied. That's so funny. Like, one of the clips that we got from the Commons today, World's End, was a clip of Keir Starmer going, well, the problem is that we did an assessment into Peter Mandelson as the ambassador, and he kept lying to us. He kept lying and lying about what was happening. And I'm just like, wow, it's bad when people lie, isn't it, Keir? Don't you agree that it's bad when people lie? Telling lies is bad. Isn't that what the Jim Carrey movie was all about? That liars will eventually catch up to you? Well, turns out, you know, maybe someone who is definitely not a proven morally corrupt serial liar may or may not be implicated in the lies from Peter Mandelson as well. Me too, Lena Marie, me too. Seems New Labour's chickens are coming home to roost. I mean, again, it's just The left were correct too early about what the Labour right was like. We were just correct too early that all of the people. Sorry. We were just correct too early that all of the people surrounding not just Keir Starmer, but Wes Streeting, Morgan McSweeney, Peter Mandelson, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, all of those people from all the people surrounding them were just obviously people who were totally unfit for office. And whilst the left were being derided for correctly pointing this out, being called like engaging in student politics, blah 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 blah, and we were just correct the whole time. And it was the same press who gave Keir Starmer a free run into office, just allowed him to waltz in to one of the most powerful positions in the world with zero scrutiny. Thank you for all of the re-uppings to the memberships. Thank you, guys. And again, like, there was a vote of no confidence, as you say, in Jeremy Corbyn when there was the chicken coup internally to try and get him to resign over slightly bad poll ratings. But now we've got a scandal where the Prime Minister appoints to the most prestigious ambassadorial role potentially in the world the position of somebody who is well known to have links to the world's most prolific sex trafficker. Did you see the story about Mandelson vetting Labour candidates with McSweeney before the 24 election to see if they were too left-wing? Another one for the being right too early. Well, yeah, I literally said this on stream the other day, didn't I? Where I was talking about the fact that the reason why Peter Mandelson wanted to undermine Jeremy Corbyn every day, his own words, was because that Corbyn wouldn't play nicey-nicey. He wouldn't be willing to protect people like Mandelson, give them the impunity and the lack of accountability that they wanted. That's the thing that scares these people most, other than communism, obviously, is accountability. And Jeremy Corbyn would have provided that accountability, and potentially rebel Labour MPs who didn't follow the party script and the party line would also be people who would give some level of accountability to people like Starmer and Mandelson, which is why they had to be removed, i.e. people with a moral conscience. People with moral scruples wouldn't have been allowed to have ended up being standing as Labour candidates because they may potentially get into government and hold the feet of the government to the fire. And for half the government are literal student politicians, i.e. PP, and they call anything remotely nice student politics. It's so true, Oliver, yeah. And Wes Streeting is going to be the potential fucking new Prime Minister if Keir Starmer does resign. And he's also somebody who's very close with Peter Mandelson and Morgan McSweeney. I mean, it's again, it's just I wish I could enjoy it more. I wish I could enjoy the fall of the Labour Party more, but there is still part of me, you know, that wonders what could have been. But again, the reality is this was Mandelson's role, was creating New Labour and the Labour right and everything that followed. You know, like, people talk about the Labour right as some kind of eternal entity, but the New Labour right is very different to the Labour right of like the 1950s and 60s, you know? Like, it's worth pointing out that in like the 60s, like the Labour right's position was to abolish landlords, just as the Green Party is today. Like, that was the Labour right's position. That was the Hugh Gates School manifesto, involved the abolition of private rent. And not actually just like taxing it out of existence, which is the current Green Party plan, actively banning rental properties and being a landlord, you know? How the Labour right has changed. No Marxists implicated in the Epstein files. Chomsky is implicated in the Epstein files, but there are very few other leftists who are involved. It's true. The old Labour right was like, we're just as economically left, but we hate trade unions for no reason. I mean, it is worth looking at the reality of like the Barbara Castle era and In Place of Strife, which was again, probably pretty prescient of what happened in the 1970s. I don't think it's necessarily a hatred of trade unions, more a skepticism of what happens without some kind of negotiating tactic. But then again, that's what capitalism will create. It's always going to be a fight it's always going to be a conflict between labor and capital, and trade unions is a representation of that. Like the mediation of that conflict is how you create social democracy and not socialism, which is why they were the Labour right, not the Labour left. But of course, that was the Labour right of old, who were just, it was social democrats versus democratic socialists. And now the Labour left is centrist liberals, and the Labour right are corporate neoliberals, right? Like that's that's the reality of the modern Labour Party, is that the Labour left is just social liberals. It's not even social democrats anymore. Like, Chomsky was defending Epstein even after the convictions. Like, it's over. It's over for Chomsky. I did watch Novara, and I thought that Aaron and Michael were a little bit too forgiving for Chomsky. No such forgiveness over here, unfortunately, chat. Have you seen the bowler hat man video on the Greens lying in the by-election? His panicking is going to lose his job. I mean, I watched like 5 seconds of it. I just didn't think that it was worth bothering with, unfortunately. Like, it's not like he gets many views for me to want to pile into him, you know. It's been nasty of me, since seeing as that I have a pretty dedicated viewer base. I don't think it would be worth my time in inviting some kind of dissension upon his comment section, you know. But I did see it. I did see his video, and I did. Again, we don't really have much internal poll. We don't have any official proper polls of the constituency yet, so it's all speculation. But going by the bookies' favourite, and they're rarely wrong, it looks like it's good for the Greens at the moment. McSweeney was Mandelson's apprentice, more or less. The public need to know it. This goes back to the rant that I just posted on YouTube a couple of hours ago. You know, this goes back to what I was saying, that yeah, there should be scrutiny of Peter Mandelson, and sorry, there should be scrutiny of Morgan McSweeney, but there won't be, because Morgan McSweeney is the chief leaker that Mandelson used to be. He is the new Mandelson. He is the access man, and the journalists know that Mandelson's time is up, so they can get away with you know, ending his career in journalist terms, right? But when it comes to McSweeney, he's the inner ring. He's their access to Starmer in the administration. How are they going to get their stories if McSweeney loses his position, right? It's another reason why journalists hate Jeremy Corbyn so much. The Labour left wouldn't give them access. That's the thing, right? There was no access available under Jeremy Corbyn, so the press could only write negative things. If they laid it into Morgan McSweeney, he might be replaced with a different chief of staff or a different prime minister who wouldn't give the press access. It's why they're all trying to make this a problem for Peter Mandelson specifically and leave McSweeney's name out of this, when despite everything, McSweeney is the one to blame. Of course, Keir Starmer appointed him, but we all know that Keir Starmer is a fucking empty suit. He is Orville. McSweeney is Keith Harris. That is the reality. There is no Keir Starmer without Morgan McSweeney, and vice versa, of course. And so the idea that somehow this is uniquely a problem for Starmer, and isn't, of course, entirely downwind of the relationship between McSweeney and Mandelson, going all the way back to the Excalibur days, again, it just shows that the media actually care far more about their own stories and access than about actually holding powerful politicians to account. I don't think that manufacturing consent was plagiarized, and again, it was also wrote with Edward Herman, that is worth pointing out. But they were just kind of consolidating a bunch of ideas already kind of extolled by people like Gramsci and Parenti. So true, 16 Jacob screams, so true. Oh yeah, 100% Vicky, 100%. I think that's true, Becca. I don't think that Labour would ever get a woman being Prime Minister. Thank you, Ronald, for the membership. Welcome to the show. Yep, turns out he was the son of a toolmaker, after all. Again, it's just the takes from the media have been so illuminating of this whole saga. As it turns out, our enemies are just ontologically evil after all. So true. Why has this got the wrong screen? Give me Andrew Marr. There we go. Thank you, Katie, for the 10 gifties. It's incredibly generous of you. Thank you. So true, Aiden. Ava Santina has been saying she suffered professionally for not following the press omerta and talking about Mandelson. Yep, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if she had some pretty dark DMs from the Dark Lord himself over her continual desire to, hold friends of sex traffickers accountable, because people like Ava Santina care about misogyny and care about these kind of things in a way that our lobby journalists only care about stories. Do we set up a vegetable now, or do we have to wait a bit? Maybe that's what I should do. Maybe I should be the one to set up the lettuce stream for Keir Starmer. But again, throughout the whole mess, not just around Peter Mandelson, but all the other scandals that have engulfed Keir Starmer, and indeed the scandals that should have engulfed Keir Starmer but never did, because of the press not bothering to report on them because they negatively affected the left. And of course, the left are not legitimate political actors in the eyes of the UK media. What they have been continually trying to railroad into the public is the idea, A, of Keir Starmer's credentials as a politician, and B, of the high level of his character. And it's just so obvious that neither of these things are true. Like, here's Andrew Marr talking about his relationship with Keir Starmer and his judgment over what's happened with Peter Mandelson.
This is going to sound perhaps like a confession, even an embarrassing one. But here goes. I have always liked Keir Starmer. Worse, I think he is a fundamentally decent man in politics for the right reasons. So I say the following with genuine sadness.
And again, he wasn't in politics for the right reasons. He was shoehorned into the seat of Holborn and St Pancras, having been the Director of Public Prosecutions, to be a potential Attorney General for Ed Miliband should they win the election in 2015. It was nothing to do with his desire to be a politician. He never wanted to be one in the first place. He barely wanted to be Prime Minister. He was only there because the Labour right forced him into the position because they needed someone qualified to be Attorney General if they won the election. Did you see Zoe Williams make a mockery of Tom Baldwin and his sycophancy on the forecast a few hours ago? He was an embarrassment. Oh my fucking god. I didn't know that Zoe Williams was on the forecast, but Tom Baldwin is just exactly the same as Andrew Marr was just saying now, going, well, Keir Starmer's just an honest and decent man, and he just made some terrible mistakes. I'm like, he is a morally corrupt serial liar, a proven one at that. We all know that it is all lies and subterfuge, from the Brexit referendum to what was happening behind closed doors when he was members of the shadow cabinet plotting behind the scenes with Labour together, what was going on during the leadership election and how he lied to the membership of the party and then lied to the MPs within the Labour Party in the direction of the party, who allowed himself to be controlled by Mandelson and Streeting after the Hartlepool by-election, who lied to the public by giving them a manifesto packed with lies or mistruths or misdirections, and with a shadow manifesto full of policies that they didn't include in the manifesto because they knew that it might lose them votes at the election, who lied about the state of the country and what they planned to do with it, who then got into government and then lied about the impact of the policies that they were looking to put into place. Like, all he does is lie, and not just about, like, important stuff, like what I've detailed there, but on stupid stuff too. Like speaking to Nick Ferrari and going, oh, well, I never said that Jeremy Corbyn was a friend as well as a colleague, when quite literally the video that he posted when he was in running for the Labour leader said those exact words. He's just honestly, he's just the biggest liar in politics, more so than Boris Johnson. At the very least, you thought Boris Johnson was doing it for, like, raw self-preservation instincts, that someone was desperate. Keir Starmer just does it because he likes it. He does it over and over and over again for no reason, both maliciously and also for no reason at all. Again, he's just a really, really bad human being. Just a bad human being who's totally immoral, or amoral even. Totally out of the realm of moral considerations at all. And so no, you cannot convince me that he's a decent man. Especially not since he got a guy deported for stealing a lump of ice cream. For more information on Keir Starmer's subterfuge as a political operator, everyone should go and read the book The Fraud by Paul Holden. It's very good.
But I think we have entered the final stage of the Starmer premiership. I don't know exactly how or when the end will come. Often these things are a surprise, and there are circumstances, if nobody moves, if everybody waits back, in which he could carry on, unhappily enough, at least until the summer. But listening to furious, disillusioned Labour MPs and reflecting on his frankly unconvincing performance earlier this afternoon on the Mandelson affair, it feels as if we have reached a tipping point. Too many misjudgments, too much authority lost.
And again, he says these misjudgment. No, he's just a bad person doing bad things. He appointed the best friend, in his own words, of a notorious child sex trafficker, knowingly. He knowingly knew that these people were in a relation. He was open in knowing about the relationship between Mandelson and Epstein, and appointed him anyway because he thought that he would get away with it and it would never come back to bite him. It's not a misjudgment to be honest about the fact that the people who are currently part of the Politburo at the top of the Labour Party are fundamentally bad people. They're fundamentally bad people doing bad things because they think they won't be comeuppance. And now the chickens are coming home to roost. And again, like, you talk about lost authority. Again, as if this guy deserves any authority in the first place. As if it is grumbling Labour MPs who are the ones to blame for Keir Starmer's potential downfall, and not his own terrible actions as a bad human being.
Too little direction. I really see no way back.
I mean, yeah, this was true 12 months ago, honestly. But just again, they're insistent that he's a decent and good and honest man, and just none of these things are true. Just none of these things are even close to being true. He's a bad person who does bad things. Yep, exactly, Becca, exactly. They thought that Trump as president would protect them, and they did the opposite. To be fair, Chloe, I think those are just the minutes from the security briefing that was had between Mandelson and the board that scrutinizes people for ambassadorial appointments, because they have to go through pretty extensive scrutiny to get appointed to that position. So there would be documentation proving or disproving whether or not he lied specifically to Starmer. How do we get 3 terms out of Blair? Nothing lasts now, with the press getting better at doing their job. I mean, the problem is, very Zane, is they're actually worse at their job. Again, because when it comes to this Epstein stuff, The press did nothing. Like, you're going to hear and you're going to read reams and reams and reams of journalistic screed in the coming weeks and months from journalists pretending that they had any hand in bringing down Peter Mandelson and therefore McSweeney and Keir Starmer eventually. And in reality, the press did nothing. They didn't bother looking into it unless you're Jim Pickard from the Financial Times. Big ups to Jim, the only guy seemingly doing his job in the mainstream media because the Financial Times is the only reputable outlet left in this country. And the only reason we're in this position is because of Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie in the United States and the House Oversight Committee enforcing the release of the Epstein files by the DOJ. Like, this is the only reason any of this information is in the public domain, is because of legislation passed bipartisanly between the Democrats and some Republicans who hate Donald Trump. So without the Epstein Transparency Act being passed in US Congress, the journalists in this country would have let all of this completely go. Outside of, again, people like Ava Santina and Jim Pickard, no one else bothered even questioning or scrutinising Keir Starmer and Mandelson over this stuff. Nobody. And yet the journalists are going to be totally waxing lyrical. Like, the journalists in this country are going to be waxing lyrical over and over and over again about how they were the ones to bring down the government over this issue. And they did nothing. They did nothing. Nothing at all. The reason why we're in this position and governments don't last anymore is because over time our political class has become even more corrupted. Peter Obon talks about this stuff very frequently, and it's, as someone who professes to be a conservative, I will treat it with the good faith that I think that it deserves. And he states quite clearly that it used to be that even if you disagreed with a politician in this country, at least you never really questioned their motives. You never really questioned the idea that they were bought out by some kind of power in the background. And that wasn't necessarily all true. They certainly were bought out to some extent, but not nearly to the same extent as they have been in the neoliberal era of giant fucking chasms of wealth between the haves and have-nots. There was a brief period, I guess pre-social media too, where the neoliberal bubble was difficult to burst because the people who were being protected by the super rich and the super rich were being protected by the politicians had a veil of secrecy because the media never questioned it either. But in the modern era, the politicians are worse because they're used to being protected by the super rich. The media is worse, but there's now social media that holds people accountable and keeps the receipts. And people are so brazen because the power dynamics have been so skewed in favor of the rich and the politicians that they buy that it's just so obvious nowadays, and it always waiting for just the key piece of evidence for the entire house of cards to become tumbling down, which is the reality of the Epstein files. So jarring watching James O'Brien and co frame this as unprecedented. It's something that's been believed for a decade, but now you think it's going to cause a genuine shake-up. Well, that is interesting. I mean, again, it's not like the Labour right have been non-averse to scandals, is it? It's not like the Labour right have been unmarred by scandalous behaviour. Not just Peter Mandelson, who has of course had to resign twice because of scandals involving himself and lack of probity in public office. This thing reminds you that Keir Starmer talked all about, ending the Tory chaos, you know? But when it comes to New Labour, this is the party of the expenses scandal. New Labour is the party of cash for honours. New Labour is the party of the Iraq War, the illegal Iraq War, the dodgy dossier. This is not a Peter Mandelson problem, even though he is a large figure in this particular issue. It is entirely a problem that's constructed of a political class that feel like they're unaccountable. And a lot of this is birthed out of the politics of the Labour right. It's important to understand, really, that the Labour right's politics were being shaped during the Thatcher era that made it embedded in politics, right? Like, of course, the Thatcher era was corrupt too, but this kind of spin era was kind of developed by people like Campbell and Mandelson in the background in opposition that they then took into government as well. Keir Starmer was literally the guy who prosecuted the Blair era Labour right for the expenses scandal. It's true, it really is interesting watching the downfall of Keir Starmer as a human rights liar-in-chief, given the things that he's done and who he's prosecuted, just becoming absorbed by that same fucking sphere of people, as you've pointed out as well, Ben. Like, it used to be that you just paid people who shared your opinions, and now you can just pay people to have your own opinions. Is what the think tank sphere is for. Yeah, the question will be is when does this scrutiny go all the way into Labour together? Like, Mandelson and McSweeney were both close to the people from Labour together. I mean, McSweeney literally led Labour together before it was taken over by Josh Simons, who then became an MP. It'll be interesting to see if they'll put any scrutiny into the whole mucky system behind Keir Starmer that got him into position in the first place. I mean, it's like Adam Curtis is just going to be a continual feature. What are we going to do when he's gone, honestly? We managed to get a UCLA professor fired over the Epstein files. Epstein emailed him asking for advice that was used to abuse a child. Well, that's... At least they've been fired. Hopefully prison time will be forthcoming. I've already seen Labour fanboys claiming Streeting is a fantastic communicator and dealing with Mandelson. I mean, it's so funny. Again, he's close to all of these people. He's part of the kind of Excalibur era McSweeney clan, you know? I'm not surprised, Ben. I mean, that's good. It is. I mean, it is good that we have the Greens in England and Wales, and obviously there's Plaid Cymru and the SNP too. It's so funny, really. Like, honestly. On the subject of streeting, he was asked about the Epstein revelations around Peter Mandelson when he had a call-in with LBC today. I wonder what he had to say in defence.
Well, listen, there's a lot of talk about you being the next leader.
Maybe I should watch that at normal speed, given that we're one stream. Thank you, the Jack Miller, for the 10 gifties. It's incredibly generous of you. Thank you. It'd be nice if the Epstein saga taught the masses that the elites are bad people and the rich and people working in their interests can't be trusted to run governments. I mean, I'd like to hope so. I'd like to hope so. Anyway, on the subject of West Streeting, he was on LBC today taking calls from the public, and he was asked about the Mandelson and Epstein revelations. Let's see what he had to say.
The answer, clearly, that he was never going to be able to be resolved today in the answer, but I hope you were satisfied with the answer, Elliot, in Bournemouth. Now, West Streeting Health Secretary, on the day you announced the National Cancer Plan, there is a story dominating that is not the National Cancer Plan, although I hope you feel we've given it plenty of time here on LBC.
You've given more of an airing than most, and I know exactly where this is going, and I'm just going to try and keep my temperature down now.
Well, listen, there's a lot of talk about you being the next leader. I have a simple question for you. Would you have appointed Peter Mandelson to the Washington job, knowing exactly what Keir Starmer knew at the time? Yes or no?
Well, the Prime Minister's going to publish what he did know, and we can make judgments. We can make judgments then. I do think, and look, it's very easy with hindsight, and it'd be very easy for me now to sit here and say, well, I wouldn't have done that. The reason why the Prime Minister appointed...
I mean, we all knew that he was good friends. We all seen the photos. We've all seen the Financial Times' reporting on this, so much so that it made Peter Mandelson very angry and said the Financial Times were obsessed with him over this stuff. Turns out it was a pretty reasonable obsession from Jim Peckett and the FT. Again, one absolute giga-chad. Thank you to the FT for being the single useful publication left in the UK journalistic sphere in this country. Hey-ho. But anyway, it's really funny to me that West Streeting can't just say no, given the fact that we openly knew this guy was fraternizing with Epstein, even after the conviction, right? Like, it's almost like Wes Streeting, as a key member of Labour together and a key ally of both Keir Starmer, Morgan McSweeney and Peter Mandelson, doesn't want to say anything that makes his friend sad. It's really obvious. It's really obvious. If you know somebody was friends with Jeffrey Epstein after this guy had been convicted of sex trafficking and paedophilia, don't appoint them to the most prestigious ambassadorial role potentially in the world. Just a thought. Just a thought. Because that's the kind of stuff that Keir Starmer knew about, because it's what the FT knew about at the time. The FT asked Keir Starmer about this and he refused to answer. In 2024, before the election. But of course, yeah, Wes Streeting will not answer this question properly. Because there was already an ambassador in place who was well liked by both the Democratic and Republican parties, including the Trump administration specifically. There was already an ambassador in post. You didn't need to appoint a new one, but of course, I wonder how Mandelson managed to wrangle that job when it didn't even exist. I wonder how. I wonder what Excalibur documents he might have had access to.
Appointed Peter Mandelson was because he'd been the business secretary in this country, he'd been the EU Trade Commissioner.
He'd been the business secretary when he was leaking stuff to Jeffrey Epstein about sensitive government policy. That's what was happening when he was business secretary, by the way.
He'd done all of those things, having resigned from government previously, and with his...
Resigned from government previously, Wesley? Why? Did he resign for totally innocent reasons, or did he resign twice over actual scandals involving lack of probity in public office? He'd resigned twice for being unscrupulous.
His associations with Jeffrey Epstein known to the extent to which they were known in the public domain. And this had been reported on in the media, and he had still maintained a very public profile in the media and as a broadcaster and so on. And it was felt...
Why? How? How was... I mean, it's interesting that this is his defence. Well, the media didn't seem to care about his links to Jeffrey Epstein, so why should we? And I'm like, yeah, because the media are just as complicit as you motherfuckers are. The media wanted Mandelson so they can have access to the administration just as much as you like having Mandelson around to be able to give that access.
His skills would be of benefit to us.
I think people get the positives, but the negative isn't quite as you or the Prime Minister have described it. The negative is that up until very recently, it was clearly known that Peter Mandelson was conducting a close friendship. See what JP Morgan's internal report said when it was in a New York court in 2023. That's what I mean by recent. That close friendship was ongoing, and it was ongoing after a conviction for soliciting prostitution from a child. And that's legalese language. That is sexually abusing a child.
Yeah.
And continuing a friendship with a man who has sexually abused a child and been prosecuted for it, convicted of it. Friendship continues. Doesn't that just exclude you from a job like this?
Yes. Yes, it should. Interesting that Wes has still tried to defend this up to now. Again, I wonder, potentially, if there may or may not be Excalibur documents pertaining to Wes Streeting. Who knows?
I don't think people really knew the extent of that friendship, and
we all knew. Again, we have the JP Morgan files reported on by the FT at the time. Jim Pickard openly asked this multiple times to Keir Starmer, and he refused to answer. You're OJ. You're guilty as fuck, Wes. Just admit that it was bad.
Does the extent matter?
Well, in the sense that, we don't just do guilt by association, and you don't just write people off because they've had the misfortune of knowing someone who...
It's not misfortune to continue being friends with someone who you know raped children. I'm losing my fucking mind, chat. I'm absolutely losing my mind here. Oh, well, it's unfortunate that Peter Mandelson... He's describing the misfortune as being Peter Mandelson's misfortune. As if somehow Peter Mandelson accidentally became friends with a convicted paedophile and remained friends with a convicted paedophile, right? I've made friends with a sex trafficker by mistake. Brilliant communicator, by the way, and obvious leadership material. Yeah, I wonder why the poll we looked at yesterday showed that Wes Streeting was even less popular in terms of Westminster voting intention than Keir Starmer was.
Because
close friendship isn't the same as just knowing someone.
But I wouldn't. At the same time, though, Sheila, you know, I've seen Peter Mandelson popping up in the media over the years, and you know, I don't think the full extent of that relationship and that association was known. And in fact,
it was known. Everybody knew. Everyone in the actual alternative media realm, everyone in independent media was talking about this for ages. Like, Novara Media were talking about this stuff. The Financial Times, what essentially might as well be the paper of record, now that the actual Times is owned by Rupert Murdoch and News Corp. They were reporting on this ages ago. It was public domain. The fact that you didn't know this, given how close friends you were with him, Wesley, is interesting. And again, the reason why the mainstream media didn't comment on this, apart from the FT, again, is because they wanted access, both to the Keir Starmer administration, but also potentially to people in his cabinet too. No names mentioned.
The moment the Prime Minister was clear on the extent of it, which was when the last Epstein files came out, he sacked him immediately, got him woken up in the middle of the night and put on a plane back to London. So that does tell you that had the Prime Minister known, he would not have appointed him.
But and we knowing know that he still hung out.
Yeah, so it was okay when Keir Starmer knew that Peter Mandelson had continually stayed friends with someone who raped kids and stayed at his house, and affectionately knew him as Petey. Or he was affectionately known as Petey by Jeffrey Epstein. That was fine. But as soon as we knew the other stuff, that's when it crossed the line. Okay, glad we've cleared this up now, Wesley.
With a paedophile, did not exercise him enough to do that way sooner and not give him that job.
Well, there was that explanation given, which clearly does not now hold up to scrutiny, of what Peter Mandelson had said in his defence, which was, well, I was convinced and misled and deluded that you know, he hadn't actually done what he was accused of, and he stood by someone he thought was a victim of a miscarriage of judgment. Now, that was a...
I'm sorry, it's like, yeah, well, I just disagree with the conviction of the guy who was done in sex trafficking, or this terrible miscarriage of justice. That's the guy's... This is the man whose supposed judgment warrants appointment to one of the highest ambassadorial roles in the world. Do I need to say more?
That was a gross error of judgment. But what we now know is that the friendship was far more extensive than we ever knew, any of us ever knew. And secondly, we also saw the extent to which Peter Mandelson was engaged in serious misconduct in public office. Now, whether that meets the criminal threshold of that crime is for the police to decide. Yeah, I'm not going to comment on that.
I know, that's in the here and now. But I think my question alluded to what you would have or could have done. And I think you've said to me, Wes Streeting, that you conceivably could have given him that job.
I think it's, to be honest, I think when you get a hypothetical question like that of something which has proven to be a disaster, then, of course, it's very easy to sit here with hindsight and sit in judgment on someone else who did have to make the decision. And I'm not going to do that.
They didn't have to make the decision. There was an ambassador in place already. They chose to replace the existing ambassador, who still had time and tenure in that role, with Peter Mandelson for deliberate political reasons, because they wanted to. There was no decision that had to be made. They deliberately made this decision to benefit Peter Mandelson, to make a political decision for themselves because they thought they could gain from it. There was no necessary decision to be made because there was not an open ambassadorial role until they decided to make it open by firing the existing one to replace with Peter Mandelson, the friend of Jeffrey Epstein.
That to our own Prime Minister.
Okay.
What I will say for Keir Starmer is when the full facts were known in the last round, that was enough for Keir to fire him immediately. Keir Starmer is leaning into
more of the facts. We still don't know the full facts.
No, we don't know what indeed, and we saw more of that just come out in recent days. And Keir Starmer's also leaning into full transparency here around the appointment process.
Well, we'll see
and
what comes from the debate that's going on in the House of Commons now about the.
It's just, honestly, it shows you the level of power that Mandelson had, and still probably does have, the level to which that even now, the people are still trying to defend the shit that he's done. Incredible scenes. I'm interested in what's happening on the forecast, given that apparently Zoe William fucking rips into Tom Baldwin.
The Labour Party should get on with governing rather than getting constantly tied up in this addiction to chaos, crisis.
I don't think
Addiction, they're not addicted to chaos and crisis, they are just chaotic.
when the public think about Peter Mandelson, they'll think that's a problem contained to a different era of the Labour Party, especially because their views of that Labour Party, this current one, and Keir Starmer are so bad. They're not going to give him any benefit of the doubt.
Do you want him in charge, or do you want Nigel Farage?
You will never persuade me to just suck up the depredations of a Labour government in order to prevent the incursions of the far right, because I look at the Labour government.
Thank you, Casey, for another 10 gifties. Incredibly generous. Thank you.
Finish Starmer off. Hello and welcome to the forecast. It's the scandal that just keeps getting worse. Certainly the biggest crisis for Keir Starmer. Could it finish him off, or is it even bigger than that? Is Labour's position recoverable, or is it now a dead man walking? The PM admits Peter Mandelson's relationship with the dead paedophile and sex abuser Jeffrey Epstein came up as part of the vetting process for ambassador to Washington, but he says Mandelson lied and lied again, saying he betrayed our country and our party. But what concerns were raised during the vetting process, and were they overruled? If so, who by? If Starmer wasn't warned, why not? The stench of sleaze and corruption hangs heavy in the air over Westminster right now. So can the government escape it, or is this the final straw for Labour backbenchers already wondering whether to throw Starmer overboard? Joining me to discuss this, Starmer biographer Tom Baldwin.
If Keir Starmer does have to resign as Prime Minister, I hope he gets forced to resign as an MP as well. I want his reputation in tatters. I want Keir Starmer not to be able to show his fucking face in public. I want his entire life for him only to be remembered as the guy who appointed the friend of the pedo as the ambassador. That's all I want Keir Starmer to be remembered for. I want him to never be able to show his face in public again. Honestly, I hate him so much. Maybe this is being me being just really nasty of me. I just want him to be sad. I just want him to wake up and be miserable every day. I'm so his entire political career has been entirely based out of being vindictive and spiteful, so I'm going to do the same back. No more nice left, you know? This is not the be kind left anymore. I mean, if he did resign his seat from Hobart and St Pancras, I would love to see potentially Zach Polanski run in the seat. It would be so fucking funny.
The political commentator Zoe Williams and the pollster and strategist Scarlett Maguire. Tom, I mean, jaws are on the floor and getting wider by the hour. Can you think of a worse political scandal?
I mean, that's true, actually. I forgot. It's really easy to forget. It's really easy to forget that this guy helped commit a genocide, right? After all of this stuff, we talk about Mandelson and the lies within the internal Labour Party, and I'm just like, this guy fucking sold weapons to a government that committed genocide. He supported the genocide live on telly. He said, I think Israel has the right to commit war crimes. He openly supported it. Like, that guy doesn't need to be fucking thrown out of the Commons. He needs to be sent to the International Criminal Court. Like...
Scandal in our lifetime or beyond.
I do think it's a scandal. I do think this is shocking. But essentially, if the real sin happened under the last Labour government, when Gordon Brown was Prime Minister, when Peter Mandelson was Business Secretary, that's when he was disclosing confidential market-sensitive information, apparently to Jeffrey Epstein. The question about this government is why they appointed Peter Mandelson.
And what they were warned about.
Now, that's a good question. But it's not a scandal about this government until it can be shown that Keir Starmer knew what we know now.
No. To be fair, the scandal already exists, really. Again, a lot of the revelations here are stuff that weren't known publicly when he was appointed as ambassador. But who fucking cares? Who cares about the reality of the fact that he's even worse than just a friend of a paedophile, right? But also the friend of the paedophile who leaked government documents. I mean, it's a bit of a fly in the ointment, really, at this point.
Question about
does he have to know everything that we know now? I mean, we knew from 2023 onwards, because the FT ran a story about it, that Mandelson had maintained a relationship with Epstein after he had been found to have been involved in sex trafficking, and yet he carried on. And there would have been a vetting process. We don't know what it said. Maybe we'll get to find out if these papers are published. But whatever concerns it may have raised were clearly overruled. That does make it a scandal for this government.
Well, there's a question, I think.
Yes, it does. It is a scandal. He was appointed to this position, and we knew this guy had been friends with Jeffrey Epstein after his conviction for sex trafficking. Well done, yes.
Whether the Prime Minister should have known what essentially is unknowable because Peter Mandelson was lying to...
No. It wasn't unknowable this guy was friends with Epstein. It was in the FT. Shut up.
The Prime Minister, lying to his oldest friends, possibly even lying to himself.
Yeah, lying's bad, isn't it, Tom? Do you agree with me? Are we all agreeing, chat? Can we just... Okay, can we get a straw poll in chat? We're all agreed that lying is bad, right? We're all of the opinion that lying to the public and to other politicians is a bad thing. We all agree with this? We're all broadly in agreement with this basic fact? Shall we have a look at Keir Starmer's past 6 years as a politician, Tom? Should we have a look, potentially? Should we potentially have a little bit of scrutiny on Keir Starmer's statements as a politician for the last 6 years or so? Was he truthful throughout that period? Answers on a postcard.
About the extent of his relationship with Epstein. Now, there was a vetting process. We now know that it did raise concerns about Mandelson's continuing relationship with Epstein. That was in the public domain. So I would just say lightly...
And it was swept aside.
Well, I'd say lightly to journalists on this because there's a lot of hindsightery around. And a lot of the journalists now are saying, it was always obvious, blah, blah, blah. Well, the same journalists who are saying, what a masterstroke appointed Peter Mandelson, writing fawning pieces...
Sure, everyone was saying...
I mean, Tom is not wrong here. Tom is not wrong that the same journalists who are fawning over the appointment are now the ones going, isn't it obvious this guy was a wrong'un? And you know why they're saying this, Thomas? Because he's their access point. He's the point of access for the government. Because the press don't care about probity in public office. They care about the story. And they don't get the story without the access. That's it. That's the reality. This is why the media are pretending they did anything here when they didn't. It was the DOJ being forced to act to release the Epstein files by Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna in the Democratic House Oversight Committee as well.
Not everyone, but a lot of them were saying it. A lot of people were writing fawning pieces about it. And I'm not sure whether Channel 4 News, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, did a big podcast or a big section at the time of Peter Mandelson's appointment saying this is scandalous because we know that Peter Mandelson continued to have relationships with Epstein after his conviction. The FT did.
I think if you Google what was said at the time, there are articles across the media saying this is high risk. This is a man who's had to resign in disgrace twice.
But the premise,
and this might happen again.
But hold on, just make this point. The premise that this was a scandal because it was known that Peter Mandelson continued to have relationships with Jeffrey Epstein after his conviction. That was known to the media at the time of Peter Mandelson's appointment.
Yes. And the mainstream media wanted access who didn't report on it. The FT reported on it. Independent journalists reported on it. Politics Joe reported on it. Just because Sky News and the BBC thought to avoid this stuff, again, so that Henry Zeffman and Beth Rigby could continue to have nice little dinners with Morgan McSweeney, doesn't mean that it wasn't known to the public and indeed to Keir Starmer himself.
Were the media calling it a scandal then?
Yeah, I was.
They weren't saying it was a scandal. Okay,
I did.
it was some honourable exceptions.
No, come on. That's the weakest.
Channel 4 News.
That's genuinely the weakest argument I've ever heard you make.
Oh,
because
come on, you've heard me do some bad work.
because some people in the media didn't put their money where their mouth was 2 years ago. Therefore, nobody's got a leg to stand on now, and this isn't a scandal. That doesn't even make logical sense, Tom. And you know it's not true.
The logic is this: that for this to be the biggest scandal of our lifetime.
Oh, okay, fine.
Right?
I mean, if we're going to
be the biggest scandal of our lifetime. It is that the premise of that is we know that Downing Street and Keir Starmer knew about Mandelson's continuing links with Epstein after his conviction. So did the media. So the media did not declare this the biggest scandal of their lifetime at the time.
Well,
it is only a scandal now. It is only a scandal now because of what we know now. So the real
No, it's only a scandal now because the media realise that Mandelson's career is over, so they know they don't need him for Access anymore, so are throwing the baby out. That's literally it. It's exactly the same with Boris Johnson. You know, this is what is so funny about this, is that Keir Starmer was touted as the antidote to Boris Johnson, as the adults being back in the room, the quiet. It's nice, isn't it, the quiet, the very famous tweet, right? That was the reality of how the public was sold Keir Starmer would be as a safe pair of hands to guide the country during tough times. That was what everybody was told. When in reality, he's exactly the same as Boris Johnson, and the media's attitude to him is exactly the same too. Boris Johnson was given so much protection by the media, given all of the wrongdoing that he did while in office, and indeed he did before he was in office, like making up quotes to journalists, like conspiring to have a journalist beaten up. All of those different scandals involving Boris Johnson were never brought up when he was campaigning to be Prime Minister. It was only when Johnson became no longer relevant to the interest of the media did they finally drop the hammer blow about things like Chris Pincher, things like Partygate, all the stuff that ended up leading to his downfall. It was only when he was not politically relevant. Journalists knew. Journalists obviously knew about all the stuff that was going on behind closed doors and waited until it was opportune for them to no longer want access to Cummings and Johnson to dethrone him. The same is true of Mandelson. They all knew this stuff, they all known what was happening within the FT. This was open knowledge and was only written about by Jim Pickard and potentially independent media at the same time. The press knew there was no reason to release this information to make it a scandal, whilst they still needed access to Mandelson to know what was going on in government. Now Mandelson's career is obviously over and they do not need access. They can get rid of him just like this. It happens every single time. This is the reality of the media in this country. It is not the fearless fourth estate. It is a profit-centric institute owned by corporate capitalists.
The real question, which will determine whether it is a big scandal about this government, is whether Downing Street knew more than what was in the public domain then.
That doesn't make sense for the aforementioned reasons. B, that none of that has to do with Keir Starmer's judgment. Keir Starmer's judgment is what's at issue here. And whether or not certain commentators called it out properly at the time, whether Chris ran a package about it, doesn't make any difference. If he had a kind of moral compass, if he could see the man in front of him, if he could put priorities ahead of electoral calculation, which, by the way, I don't think Peter Mandelson did serve very well, but that's what he thought he served, then if he doesn't have those qualities, then those aren't qualities that he has, and that's a problem.
Question, what and maybe we will find out, and maybe we won't.
What he knew in the vetting process.
The concerns were, and what was said about them in order to sweep them aside.
But it's also, that is the key question, but there is also a kind of more fundamental question, which is, a calculation was made that whatever the relationship was between Peter Mandelson and Epstein, it didn't matter so long as nobody was looking directly at it. Now, somebody for whom that was a real matter of conscience, for whom fraternising with a known paedophile really was a moral issue, would have said, I'm just not wild about this. I'm not wild about sending Mandelson as envoy, as ambassador to Trump, who is himself a known associate of Epstein.
And again, they didn't need to do this. They did not need to change the ambassadorial role. They wanted to find some kind of political leverage from having a political appointment and thought that the juice was worth the squeeze. They thought that they were going to get some kind of political kickback from having Mandelson in that position, which is why they proactively ensured that he was there. This wasn't reactive, this was proactive. This wasn't a lack of judgment done in the quick of the moment. This wasn't bad judgment done in the heat of the moment when an ambassadorial role happened to become free. They made the proactive decision to fire the existing ambassador and replace them with Peter Mandelson deliberately because they thought they could gain something. This wasn't done out of necessity. It was done deliberately.
Whether or not this is the biggest or the second biggest or the third biggest, does it matter? I mean, won't the public now just conclude that there is the stench of scandal around Labour, who claimed to be better than the last lot, and it turns out maybe they weren't?
I think you've hit the nail on the head. And unfortunately for those in number 10, actually the public make their mind up quicker than quite a lot of some of this information can come out about exactly who knew what, when, and etc. I think the problem for the Labour Party and for Keir Starmer and the government in particular is that Peter Mandelson is incredibly well known in this country. He's far better known than Andy Burnham or Robert General Swiller-Braven and any of the other politicians we've seen enter the spotlight over the last few weeks who aren't the sort of...
I'm just going to slow it down. It is a bit too quick. A 1.15.
principal party leaders, and he is synonymous with Labour because he's been around for so long. He's been associated with so many different Labour governments, and I don't think when the public think about Peter Mandelson they'll think that's a problem contained to a different era of the Labour Party. They will think about it as the same Labour Party that we have now, especially because their views of that Labour Party, this current one, and Keir Starmer are so bad. They're not going to give him any benefit of the doubt. And then the second part of that is that, okay, they know who Peter Mandelson is. They don't think very well of Labour Party. Sorry, the third one is that this plays into all of their worst suspicions about people in politics anyway. Trust in politicians is an all-time low. It only seems to be sinking further and further the longer these surveys track it. And this is exactly what people think are up to. It might be a bit more colourful. It might be more outrageous, but unfortunately, the public have this idea that politicians, and pretty much all politicians, are just in it for themselves and elite interests and are up to no good. So if they hear this, they hear the Labour brand, they hear Peter Mandelson, I think they're going to make their own minds up, even if they're jumping to conclusions.
So Tom,
because it's not wrong. All of their assumptions about politicians are just correct. This isn't some kind of crisis of democracy. This is just the public being perceptive of the reality of democracy. Again, bourgeois democracy. I make this point every single time, and I know people are going to get mad that I'm quoting Lenin, but it's just correct that under capitalism, you have a bourgeois democracy, a democracy for the rich. That's the reality. That's the reality of liberal democracy, is that the rich control how information is disseminated. They control how people view politics through things such as... What's the Gramsci one? Fuck me. Can't believe I've forgotten the name of the thing. Either way, they get to control the narrative and they get to control the culture. They get to control how information is disseminated. That's the thing, right? They do assume that voters are stupid, and in reality, the voters are incredibly perceptive, and the politicians just aren't. Just again, like, we know what this is cultural hegemony. That's the one, Danksheev. Thank you. Cultural hegemony. Like, this is the reality of capitalist liberal democracy. So true, Vicky. So true. Just honestly. And again, this is why they had to stop Corbyn. He was the end of the gravy train.
How do you think this is savable for Keir Starmer and his administration? I mean, they're making an attempt at transparency and saying we'll publish the papers, although they don't want to publish all the papers, and it looks like they're going to be forced into it to some degree. Can he save Morgan McSweeney for a start, his right-hand man, who seems to be the one who was really pushing Mandelson's appointment?
Look, one of the frustrating things about a lot of political discussions in podcasts like this is we spend an awful lot of time talking about optics and perceptions, and that's code for avoiding substance. And one of the reasons why I think people are actually alienated by politics is it's an endless discussion about who's up and who's down, what people think about, what this focus group says, rather than actually outcomes for them in their real lives.
No, but McSweeney is about substance because he is the core of this government.
I mean, it's very interesting for the Keir Starmer defender to be like, well, this is all about optics and perceptions rather than about material substance. I'm like, yeah, well, shall we have a look at the material substance, shall we? I'm going to have a look at the material substance of Keir Starmer in government. What's that? He tried to do a bunch of stuff that his MPs didn't like. It was substantial from the fact that he did a bunch of things that he never put in the original manifesto. It's material substance that he broke a bunch of manifesto pledges, and it's material substance that he kept lying to his own members and the public continually. And, of course, it's material substance that he appointed a friend of convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein to the most prestigious ambassadorial role in the country. Like, this is all material substance. How the public do or don't think about this is, again, one for the strategists and the pollsters, but the reality is this is bad governance. He's a bad person doing bad things. Oh, well, he's doing it in service of a greater good. I'm sure Boris Johnson thought much the same thing. So many Labour defenders will talk about the stuff that goes on and go, well, he had to do this to win, because winning is important to save the country. And I'm just like, do you not think Boris Johnson thought his ideology was saving the country? Do you not think that Conservatives, even fascists, for example, even people from the far right, like Reform UK, do they not also think they're saving the country from left-wing politics? Just because you believe your politics is right, does that mean you get to break the rules to win? If everyone breaks the rules, what's the point in having rules at all? Because everyone thinks that they are morally justified in breaking the rules if that's the precedent that we set. It's insane politics to say that breaking the rules is okay for me and not for thee. And that's material substance. And again, what the public do or don't think about this is not relevant to the issue, but it does, again, violate everything that we would expect from politicians if we want to have a system that works for everybody. A system which allows this level of subterfuge, that allows this level of deceit, that allows this level of lack of confidence in public office is bad and will lead to bad outcomes. Materially bad outcomes.
So, as I say, there are genuine questions which need to be answered about what Downing Street and what Keir Starmer knew prior to Peter Mandelson's appointment. If they knew what was already in the public domain, but no more, then those same questions should be answered by the BBC, who thought that Peter Mandelson was the right choice to be the eminent.
Yes, that's not wrong. The questions of the media need to be asked. But again, this guy is so stupid. Again, as a man who's been a biographer of the Prime Minister, he doesn't understand the role that the media also plays in politics.
Degrees fronting their election coverage in 2024.
If they knew more than what was in the public eye at the time, which you have to assume is the case.
Why?
Because they're the security services?
I have limited understanding of the vetting process, but what they will do is they will go through everything that's in the public domain, and then they will sit down with the person they're vetting and say, is there anything else we need to know? What about this relationship with Epstein? What we have been told is that Peter Mandelson lied in that instance. Now, should you be hung, whether you're a Downing Street advisor or a Prime Minister, for believing lies told by someone? Now, there's a question I do accept about Peter Mandelson's record, right? He resigned twice from the last Labour government before he was reappointed, and then apparently leaked this sensitive information, which I think is shocking.
But I mean, come on. You must remember.
That's what I'm just talking about.
Oh no, but you must remember the first scandal when he took that loan.
I agree. That's what I'm just referring to.
I used to live around the corner from Peter Mandelson in the 90s in Notting Hill.
There goes the neighbourhood.
I had this little squat in Holland Park. Anyway, you'd walk past him every day. Everybody in the press was saying this man is post. He's not honest. He takes loans. That's not how Labour politicians are supposed. We were promised something different. It was 97. We were promised a better kind of person, and the Prince of Darkness was just dodgy. And everybody said he's not going to last. And he would come out and stretch on his front doorstep and pick up his newspaper. And I kept passing him thinking, he doesn't look like a man who's taken this seriously. And he doesn't look like a man who's not going to last. Now, the problem with Peter Mandelson is complete impunity. Absolute. You know, he always said he's completely Teflon coated. He never gives up. But by gives up, he means he's unshameable. And everybody knew that. So why are we sitting here having this argument about whether Keir did the right thing or the wrong thing about a vetting meeting?
Well, my question
to Tom, it was really obvious what kind of man we were dealing with.
So true. I couldn't fault anything that Zoe said there. God, why? It's so frustrating that there are just like a handful of incredibly great journalists at The Guardian, which means that I can't just like entirely extricate it from my reading. She's great. She's really great. But yeah, couldn't fault anything that she said there. She's just absolutely right. Level of impunity is exactly what politicians in this country have. And again, because they are backed up by a supine press and a willing oligarchy that backs them up.
I mean, you've put a case as to why it shouldn't be pointed at Starmer and Downing Street. But given what Scarlett has said about public opinion, and it seems blindingly obvious as well how public opinion is going to go on this, the question is how can he escape this? What should he do?
Well, I think
resign. He should resign. The way that Keir Starmer escapes this is to resign from both his role as Prime Minister and his place as a Member of Parliament and disappear into obscurity forever and try and make the public forget that this ever happened in the first place. The longer that he spends in the public eye after what happened this time, the longer that he will make his own life worse in the long run. The way that he has of escaping the problems here is to totally leave public life forever. Otherwise, he'll be the guy who appointed the nonce. He'll be the guy who appointed the friend of the nonce. That'll be it. That'll be the reality of what everyone remembers of his time in politics. Froze the granny, did the genocide, immiserated the disabled, and appointed the friend of the most prolific paedophile in history, or the prolific sex trafficker in history, appointed the friend of the most prolific sex trafficker in history to the most prestigious ambassadorial role in the country, and then resigned. That will be his legacy as Prime Minister. And the longer he goes, the more that we can add to that legacy. He wants to save himself? Go. Leave. Never come back. We don't want you. The public hates you.
He's done this week, in terms of he's moved relatively speedily. I mean, you can argue he could have done some things faster, but in terms of, Peter Mandelson, getting Peter Mandelson out of the Labour Party, getting Peter Mandelson out of the House of Lords, stripping Peter Mandelson of his peerage, stripping Peter Mandelson of his membership of the Privy Council. I mean, all these things are being done. It's right that there's now an investigation into what was known in that vetting process. That seems to me a substantial issue here. And we can talk forever about perceptions and optics, but what the government has to do now is get to the bottom of what was known and let the public know what was known. Now, the point I'm making about...
But how do you stop the public blaming the government and say and jumping to all those conclusions that Scarlett is talking about, that they're all in it for themselves and they're all as bad as each other, when we're going to have investigation after investigation, possibly police investigation, possible criminal case? I mean, this is going to go on forever now.
Exactly. This is why you should just rip the plaster off. You should have a short, sharp shock. Just go. Just go. Just resign. Let it be somebody else's problem. If you resign now, Keir, all of this Peter Mandelson stuff, if it does kind of roll through the media discussion, that'll be the before times. Whichever the new Labour leader is, unless, of course, they are friends with Peter Mandelson as well, cough, cough, Wesley, they'll be able to put it in the before box and try and reset. I don't think it will work in saving the Labour Party, but it may save your personal position as a member of the Labour Party, Keir Starmer, in all of the years ahead. You resign now and it'll all be on Peter Mandelson rather than you. But he won't. He won't do it. He won't resign.
It's a good piece of advice, I think, in general, for the media, for government, for anyone in public life, to try and establish facts and stick to facts and try and do substance rather than take decisions on the basis of optics.
Oh,
now,
come on, Tom, you keep on saying the word optics as though this is just, we're all just being silly and worrying about what things look like. I'm not worrying about what things look like. I'm worrying about somebody who told a known paedophile and sex offender its secrets about the British state, which were deleterious to this nation.
If they had known that
at
then,
the time.
if they had known that then...
Let me finish my point. I'm not talking about optics. I am talking about an immoral man who did not care about the victims of Epstein and did not care about the British national interest. I am talking about a man whose morality has been in question for years, and I am talking about a party that now is like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe Peter lied to my face.
Do you think it's possible, Starmer, to separate?
Come on.
It's so true. It's so true. Again, like, none of the defences work. None of the defences work because, again, it's just like Boris Johnson. Again, it's weird how this comparison keeps happening, right? Remember during the Boris Johnson period when he was defending Partygate and going, well, I didn't think that it was a party. I just thought we were just having a get-together after the office. No one was vomiting, right? Like, that was his line before we actually had the photos and the videos and the corroborating evidence that it obviously was a party. And that his understanding of it could only be defended in two ways. Either he's lying, or he's admitting that he's so fucking monumentally stupid to be able to not recognise the things that are in front of his face. And that's the only defence he can have now for Keir Starmer. The only defences are, he was lying the whole time about what he knew about Peter Mandelson with regards to what happened with Jeffrey Epstein, that we knew because of the report in 2023, not the new revelations of the latest week or so. And the other defence is Keir Starmer is so stupid, so monumentally stupid, such potato IQ, that he listens to what Peter Mandelson said and just going, oh, okay then, I believe you. And also so stupid to not think that he would be as scandalous as he was when he was a minister in the actual government. Twice. When he resigned. Again, the only defences are Keir Starmer is a liar or Keir Starmer is stupid, which is identical. It is so identical to Boris Johnson that I can't stop finding equivocation between the premiership of Johnson and Starmer. They're just the same person. They're just the same person. Thank you, Vicky, for the £10 super chat. The Bristol school should call on the parliamentary Ofsted equivalent to go in emergency inspection of the Labour Party. So true, so true. Boris didn't go over Partygate. It was appointing Chris Pincher to chief whip and lying that he didn't know about the allegations against him. That's also true. That is also true, yeah. Like, the Chris Pincher appointment is so similar and poetically similar to the Mandelson appointment, isn't it?
The sins of Peter Mandelson from what Tom argues maybe the much lesser sins of this administration?
There will be a degree of separation, but I think it's going to be harder for the government to untangle that than they maybe think at this moment, or maybe they do realise that it's going to be that hard. But no, again, I think this is the problem. When you have a Prime Minister whose sort of approval ratings are in the gutter, which they are, is that people already want to believe the worst about Keir Starmer. Like, I find it quite astonishing when I'm in focus groups. People read bad intentions into everything he does. And now that's not, so we can talk about optics, but when you're then trying to land messages, that matters. Even when you're trying to land things that should be popular with voters or things that should at least be uncontroversial, the voters are already suspecting the worst of Keir Starmer and coming with that to what he then tells them. So I think it's going to be very, very difficult for him to really come out of this unscathed.
I mean, what's funny, right, is that there seems to be bad intention behind what Keir Starmer does, and again, the public are just being perceptive. Again, we all knew that he was wrong. The thing is, it's so funny to me. It's so funny to me that the media spent so much time trying to undermine Diane Abbott's career as a politician. The media spent so much time trying to essentially drag Diane Abbott's name in the mud. And yet the public, when faced with the idea that she might be removed from being an MP because Keir Starmer and Morgan McSweeney just wanted her out and would refuse to let her stand again in her own seat, was negatively polarising hugely. Was hugely negatively polarising for Starmer and McSweeney at the time, right? Even with all of the negative perceptions from the media about who Diane Abbott was and all of the fucking nonsense that they said about her as a politician. Even that couldn't protect Keir Starmer from looking like a twat, from looking like an arsehole for trying to get rid of her. People knew from day one that this guy was a wrong 'un.
interesting, that thing about the kind of level of unpopularity. And I've read loads of people making quite tangential explanations for it, but nothing's landed. I don't understand
I think
it.
it's partly the mood of the public. I think if you look, I don't think that Keir Starmer's, the steep incline of Keir Starmer's ratings, the decline rather, is in direct proportion to how badly he has done. I don't think anyone is mentioning that. I think the public are in such an impatient mood and are so distrustful of politicians. But again, this is why the scandal is so dangerous.
It is bizarre
because
after Partygate and the trust budget and all the rest of it that his popularity is below them. Because until this particular scandal erupted, you were thinking, well, he's maybe made some mistakes, some political mistakes, but what's he done that was so bad?
What's interesting, right? Again, it's a really important part of how we look at polling and how people look. Sorry, let me start that again. It's a really important thing to exposit here that the reason why people are so shocked at Keir Starmer's low approval ratings is because they don't quite get what's happened, which is that most politicians don't really have high approval ratings, but it's mostly made up of people on their side of the political aisle like them, people on the opposing side of the political aisle dislike them, and there are people in the middle who go either way, right? So it's usually around about 25% who really like them, 25% who really hate them, and then based upon where the other 50% go is whether they're usually like net negative by a small amount or net negative by a larger amount. Keir Starmer is unique. He's unique in the way that no one likes him. There is no Keir Starmer fan club. There is no 25% of people that like him. There is no baseline level of approval that Keir Starmer has access to because all of the people who would naturally be part of that group were told to fuck off. They were told to go away. They were told that the door was open and that they could leave. The base of the Labour Party was essentially hollowed out, deliberately so by McSweeney and Starmer. That was their plan from day one, was to tell the baseline level of Labour support that they were unwanted. Deliberately so. This was their plan all along. And so, people look at the polls and go, Keir Starmer, lowest approval ratings of all time. Well, even right-wingers liked Boris Johnson and they liked Nigel Farage, they liked Rishi Sunak, even though broadly the independently minded people didn't like either of them. And so that's why Rishi Sunak had a higher approval rating than Keir Starmer, despite being worse on lots of other issues. But there is a unique part of Keir Starmer as a politician that invites animosity, and that's because he has already given that animosity back to his own electorate by essentially telling them that they're Trotskyist scum and to fuck off.
That yields this level of unpopularity.
Well, I think that's it. And the public are, they're hungry for change. They don't think they're getting it, and fundamentally, they think he's dishonest. I was quite surprised a few months ago. I think maybe even a year ago, got one of those word clouds back. What do you think of Keir Starmer in a word? Liar was the biggest word. That was quite astonishing to me at the time because we'd not really had this.
All he'd done for 6 years was lie. Or I guess at the time of the word cloud for 4 years, all he'd done was lie. But that's the reality. He's a proven morally corrupt serial liar. All of the pledges gone, manifesto pledges gone, things not in the manifesto inputted into policy with basically no scrutiny, an entire shadow manifesto of policies. His entire political career has been shaped by subterfuge. Again, it's really interesting looking at the strategists and the pollsters and the politicians and the journalists and the media figures and the commentators, all shocked that the public are very perceptive of what Keir Starmer is, which is a morally corrupt serial liar. I can't believe that the public think he's a liar. Well, he lied lots of times. It's demonstrable. In a social media era, no one forgets. The internet does not forget. And it's very easy. Saul Staniforth on Twitter is very good at this, of just putting videos of Keir Starmer saying one thing and contradicting himself the next day just next to each other. It's so easy to do. Everyone knows he's a liar.
Examples of dishonesty as such, like we do with Boris Johnson. But that is a perception that he's dishonest, that he doesn't mean what he says, that he goes back on his word. And again, this is why something like this is damaging.
Who so funny. It's like, he hasn't really lied in the way Boris Johnson had. He lied just as much as Boris Johnson. These people are so out of touch. It's insane the level to which these people are out of touch. Lying doesn't count when you do it to the left. We know this. Very true, Dalian. Very true. The reality is, of course, is that the reason why none of these figures accept that Keir Starmer is a liar is because those lies were directed at the left. They were directed at the left, and we are not legitimate political actors in the eyes of the media. That's as simple as that. And again, there's a reason why the people named in the Epstein files were not scared of politicians. They weren't scared of journalists. They weren't scared of the media. They were scared of communists, though, because we're the ones who threaten their power.
But one of the really interesting things about politics at the moment is, according to some polls, the 5 most unpopular prime ministers in polling history are in rank order: Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak, Keir Starmer. Each of them has broken the previous one's record for unpopularity. Now, I think there's something else going on there which goes beyond a rational assessment of the capabilities and morality of each.
Literally, he's doing the "there's something wrong with the voters" again. Literally, they're going, well, Keir Starmer is so good, how can the public hate him more than they hated all the other prime ministers? So there's something going on with the electorate. No, he just sucks. He's just a bad person. Occam's razor, mate.
Each of those prime ministers.
Well, I know why I think Keir Starmer goes back on his word, and that's because that's political, and that's coming from the point of view of the left. I remember the 10 pledges that were extremely left-wing, which we're immediately gone back on. But what I don't understand is how that gets into the mainstream, into the right. I don't understand why reform voters hate him as much as they do. I just don't get it.
Do you think this will finish Starmer off?
It's really, really hard to say it is this once.
Surely this finishes Starmer off. Yeah, of course it must do. But if this doesn't, surely the May elections will. Thank you, Casey, for the £2 super chat. Rejoice, the voice of reason is nobody in the Parliamentary Labour Party. So true. Theresa May is maybe the only one who doesn't deserve to be ranked that low. She was the first Prime Minister ever to be held in contempt of Parliament. She was the one who was responsible for the go home vans. And responsible for even more austerity. They're all terrible. I hate all of them. And again, this is a very specific problem with politicians in the neoliberal era who act with impunity and are given a shield by the media, and then all find it ending up in tatters when their past catches up to them.
He's finished because, he was already in free fall. That kind of skirmish over whether Burnham could stand in Girton and Darton was embarrassing, I thought, and it showed weakness, even though a lot of people thought there was nothing else they could have done. So if it finishes Starmer, you could say definitely that was because of Peter Mandelson, but
the left hate him because he lied to them in the leadership election and purged them and told them to leave. The right hate him because he tries to pander to them and they can see through it. Again, it's so true, right? It is really true that the right are not imperceptive of Keir Starmer either. It's so obvious that he's trying to essentially con them and treat them like fucking idiots by going, look at us, we're waving flags at the fucking Labour conference. Do you not believe how patriotic we are now? This has only happened in the last couple of minutes, but you must definitely believe that this isn't a planned stunt to try and con you into voting for us. Like, these people aren't idiots. These people aren't stupid. These people aren't stupid that Mr. Free Movement in 2020 is now saying Island of Strangers in 2025. Like, again, they're not fucking idiots. They may have terrible political ideologies because they're right-wingers, but they're not stupid. They can see through it. They know when they're being pandered to. They know when someone is being insincere in their political rhetoric, right? It's so obvious that he's trying to lie to people to all ends of the political spectrum, depending on who he wants to be voted in by at the time. Lied to the left during the leadership election for the left-wing Labour Party membership. Lied to the public when it's like a centre-right public voting. Like, it's obvious that he's lying all the time. The political triangulation machine, as Kevin Logan would call it. Yeah, I'm a supporter of flags. Like, no motherfucker has ever said, I'm a supporter of flags sincerely. It's so obviously and nakedly political rhetoric designed to con the electorate.
You could equally say that he was mortally wounded beforehand.
With apologies to the people of Gorton and Denton. Tom, how do you stop Labour backbenchers saying, this is it, we've now got to move?
Thank you, the Jack Miller, for yet another £5 super chat. Incredibly generous of you, thank you. Might as well call this forecast neoliberals neoliberaling so much they can't understand why everyone hates it and they want it burned to the ground. I mean, apart from Zoe Williams, who's, again, the only person speaking sense here, and Christian Guru Murthy is obviously a good journalist, but Tom Baldwin and, like, the Merlin Strategies person, just hilarious levels of totally being away with the fairies. Lost in the sauce. This is also exactly what cost Kamala the last election. She gained no Republican votes and lost tons of the base who stayed home. Yep, don't do genocide, friends. You'll lose the votes of people with a conscience.
I think you have to get some sense of proportion on what has actually happened in terms of the scandalous nature of whatever Keir Starmer's decisions were. And I think that proportion is lacking in the media coverage at the moment. I think it's lacking on Labour backbenchers. Now, I do think, and what I was trying to say to Zoe earlier, is that there is a good case that, given what we knew about Peter Mandelson, it was always going to be a ropey appointment. And, they thought the risks were outweighed by the benefits. But, if you look at the interview he did with the Times yesterday, there are 5 areas where he's completely at odds with Keir Starmer's foreign policy. On China, on Greenland, on a rules-based international order, on Europe, indeed on Trump. And Peter Mandelson started doing this even before he was sacked. He did a speech at Ditchley Park where he basically praised Donald Trump's bombing of Iran. That's not Keir Starmer's policy. So for the ambassador to the United States pursuing his own foreign policy in his usual arrogant, high-handed, vain way, seems to me that I think his ambassadors would be untenable even with.
I mean, I think he's not wrong here, but again, this just shows just how terrible Keir Starmer's judgment was to appoint such a fucking monster to the role in the first place. You're not helping your case here, Tom. I had to hold my nose and vote for Kamala being in a purple state. I mean, that was my point in the run-up to the election. Like, my point in the run-up to the election was that people should vote for Kamala in purple states and for the PSL in safe seats. But again, what I do or don't say on my stream is irrelevant to the election. Kamala lost because she didn't convince enough people to vote for her. It's as simple as that. She's from Merlin Strategies, Stanley Beckett. She's been on Channel 4 a bunch of times, GB News. I think we played clips for Navarre Media as well. I forget.
About Epstein. So in that sense, it was a bad appointment. I agree with you, it's a bad appointment. What I don't agree is that we should be saying this is the worst ever scandal around Keir Starmer to afflict any Prime Minister ever, when we actually don't know the facts
I
yet.
don't think anyone's saying what Keir Starmer has done is the worst scandal, of our lifetime. I think people are saying that what Mandelson has done is the biggest scandal. And
in the last Labour government.
But also...
The thing is, Mandelson is the tip of the iceberg. People understand that the Labour rights are all people obsessed with power who totally lack principle. All they care about is controlling the party. It's true, like, all of the people in the background, the people rigging the selections, the people like Matt Pound who now advise Rachel Reeves, the Ovendens and the Holly Ridleys, all of those people, they're all just part of the big club who want to be in control of the party, want to be kings of the ashes, essentially, which is what they will be. Which is, thankfully, chat, something that we'll probably get out of all of this. This may be dispiriting to watch, but at the very least, there will be ashes. The Labour Party is going to get burnt down by this scandal, which is at least something we can take solace in, and maybe something actually progressive might rise from those ashes, as a phoenix from the flames, one might say. So did Jonathan Ashworth, Jay Smith, which was quite funny.
That anyone can remember. And the point is, it's almost impossible to stop that infecting Keir Starmer, even if Keir Starmer's sins are relatively small.
But also, I don't think it's right to stop it infecting Keir Starmer. And I just explain why I say that. When those of us who said when Mandelson was appointed, this appointment stinks, were told, grow up, because we need a good relationship with Trump. And the implication was only Mandelson knows how to, only Mandelson is sycophantic enough to give Trump the treatment that.
I think we've watched enough of this now. I don't think there's really much more that I can get out of this. Plus, we have apparently got Zach Polanski on Newsnight today, so I guess we'll watch that too. Let's find Newsnight. February the 4th. This is the one we want. There we go.
It wouldn't be Sainte-Marie without the murder.
Prince Andrew suggested to Newsnight.
Ooh, school check on Tom Baldwin. Excellent shout. Thank you for reminding me. A state comprehensive. But of course he did PP at Oxford. What the fuck is Arlene? Why does Arlene Foster have like a direct line to fucking Newsnight? It's quite funny.
Should we not have the ISC not have the same role now in keeping public confidence in the process?
So that was Keir Starmer's former deputy telling him to do what he didn't intend to do, which was to hand over to Parliament's Intelligence and Security Committee.
Easter by Smith says, was out leafleting with Hannah in Gorton and Denton this morning was wild. Hunzerus, yes, let's go, let's go. I'm so glad my chatters go out on a canvas. I'm so glad that I'm not just shouting into the void and we're turning into political action. Because, you know, I fucking hate that there are so many political content creators who treat their job as just like entertainment rather than actually trying to get the people who watch their stream out doing politics. So thank you. Thank you, Easter by Smith, for trying to at least do good things and get politically active. Because if people weren't doing it, I would feel like I was not doing my job correctly.
A crucial role in vetting which papers can and cannot be released related to the appointment of Peter Mandelson. And a few hours later, to avoid the risk of defeat in Parliament, Keir Starmer agreed to that.
Barry, you're nodding every time Nick says something.
Thank you, Henry VIII Fake, for another 10 gifties. You really are treating me well, Henry. I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Appalling about the handling by the Labour government of this affair. How appalling has the handling been by the Labour government?
Paddy, look, the first thing I want to say is, having listened to the Giuffres, we need to listen to victims and not to the voice of the gilded elite who think they're untouchable.
Is that what the Prime Minister did when he appointed Peter Mandelson?
I think...
Yes.
The Prime Minister today made an admission.
I should be okay for accommodation in Manchester. I do know people in the area. I think I actually know someone in Levenshulme specifically who I could potentially stay with. Who I'd have to message. I'm being a bit presumptive here. Because the person I'm talking about here definitely watches my stream. So, you know who you are. I might need to stay with you, and please message me if that's okay. But yeah, I should be okay for somewhere to stay in Manchester if I do need to come canvassing Gorton and Denton. But I'm also might be getting a lift up with Liam Pitsey, who was the guy who won the election in Derbyshire, the council election in Derbyshire, off of Reform, who just turns out happens to play Magic the Gathering at the Dice Cup in Nottingham, which is where I play Magic. Just happened to play Magic in the place with the new councillor for the Green Party, and so hopefully he'll be able to give me, or at least help me be part of where the trip of whoever's giving lifts up to Gorton and Denton to canvass.
Which I think everybody in that chamber knew he had to make, but which he resisted making, as Nick says, twice already. And you cannot hide behind process and say, well, this is the process we followed. He should have come straight out and he should have said, look, I need to say I made a big mistake here, a mistake of judgment. I believed the lies that I was told, and that is on me. I got it wrong. Now, he could have then said whatever he...
Thank you for the 10 gifties, Antifa Vegan Boy. I much appreciate the support.
wanted to about the reasons he thought Mandelson had a good relationship with Trump or whatever he wanted to say. But to try and duck it in the way that he did and hide behind process, we were squirming. The backbenchers on the Labour benches were just going, oh, for God's sake, get on with it. Just admit it. The public look at this and they say, yeah, typical politician, won't tell you straight.
Yes. Arlene, did you agree that this Labour MP is telling Nick his authority seemed to ebb as he would not answer Kemi Badenoch's question 1, 2 or third time?
I think...
Well, again, this has been the Blair playbook from the start. This is something that the Blairites were always trained to do, was not answer the question. Answer the question that you want answered rather than answer the one that's being asked of you. That's been their playbook from day one, and it is, you know, typical politician. Why would they ever answer questions that might imperil their future electoral chances? The problem, of course, is that you can't get away from this stuff anymore. Not only were you the one of the reasons for me finally joining the Greens, but the interview with Hannah pushed me to go to the Action Day on Saturday. She's definitely not screaming into the void. Thank you, Holland Cube. I appreciate the kind words. I mean, that is also true Henry VIII fake. Like, it's just like, of all the people who would have told him about, you know, maybe the word of Peter Mandelson isn't trustworthy. Like, again, his argument here is, I'm a fucking idiot who trusted someone who's notoriously untrustworthy.
When he answered it, when he finally said, yes, I did know that he had still a relationship with Epstein, there was almost a palpable, you know, and you could feel his authority going away at that time. And I mean, just to pick up on Barry's point, this whole sorry saga is about powerful men in positions of authority and women and girls being trafficked across the world, it seems, to be used and abused. And very, very sadly, Virginia Giuffre is not here today. She took her own life, presumably because of everything that had happened. So I think absolutely the victims have to be centre stage in this whole thing. And then the political farce that is going on at the moment about who knew what when comes secondary.
But can I say that all of the guests here want to talk about victims, and we've tried to respect in the earlier part of the conversation.
Sure.
But can I ask you, Zach, to talk to me about the Prime Minister? What contrast would you make to the man at the dispatch box today and the DPP pursuing Boris Johnson with his moral compass pointing north?
Well, when Keir Starmer was head of public prosecutions, it was all about his judgment, his forensic ability to ask the right questions. And here we see the most catastrophic lapse in judgment you can imagine. I think it's clear the Prime Minister should do the right thing and step down, because actually the rut runs right throughout the Labour government. This is a man in Keir Starmer who knew that Peter Mandelson was friends with one of the most known paedophiles in the world, was still staying in his apartment, and he brought him into the heart of government solely because, I imagine, he thought he could whisper in Trump's ear.
And did you say that then? Because a lot of people didn't say that then. It was in plain sight, that issue. I mean, is Keir Starmer's days numbered because of how it looks now, Barry?
Well, again, the idea that somehow this wasn't a scandal until now is entirely an invention of a political and media class. Again, I will mention again, just in case people didn't hear it the first time, only because his career being over means they no longer need him for access. They protected him, they gave him a benefit of the doubt that was totally unwarranted, because they knew that if they undermined him, they'd lose the access that he had as the right-hand man of McSweeney and Starmer. It's only once his political career became totally untenable that they knew that they could pounce because he was no longer useful to them. It was a scandal, all right? It was a scandal at the time, his appointing of Peter Mandelson to this role, given what we knew, but it was only a scandal for the plebs. It was only a scandal in independent media, and indeed at the Financial Times, thank you Jim Pickard, again, right? That was what was happening in the background as soon as he was appointed. Every motherfucker in this country thought, what the hell are you doing? This is Peter Mandelson. Do you not know who he's friends with? Every single person who knew what every single person in this country who knew what Peter Mandelson was like, who knew about his history, who knew how sleazy he was, who knew how totally unfit for high office that he was, and knew of his obvious and open connections to Jeffrey Epstein, something that was asked of Keir Starmer in 2024 before the general election by Jim Pickard on telly in a press conference. Everybody knew this, and they thought, what the fuck is Keir Starmer doing? The only people who did not think this were members of the permanent political and media class who did not want to lose access to Mandelson by impugning him with things that had been reported in 2023. It only became a scandal now because Peter Mandelson is no longer needed for access. That is it. The idea that the political media class can somehow pretend this was not a scandal before now is insane to me. It's driving me round the fucking bend. It makes me want to have an aneurysm. The fact that they're trying to say, well, actually, no, people are only noticing this now. We noticed at the fucking time. We noticed at the time. It was obvious. Again, like, you can't say that Keir Starmer didn't know and that it wasn't a scandal if he gets asked about these well-known connections in press conferences live on telly in 2024, and it's only now that these things become known to the public because of the press reporting on it. Because again, the FT reported on this in 2023. It was open and known, and it was a scandal for everybody else. It just wasn't a scandal for our political media class who didn't bother reporting on it enough at the time, and indeed holding Keir Starmer's feet to the fire over these kind of appointments, and indeed his relationship with Mandelson even before the election.
Look, this was our manifesto, right? One man, one word. Change. Yeah. That's what we promised. That was the whole of what we as the Labour Party promised this country. Change. This looks more like the same.
Should he step down?
I think that's, some bars. That's some... He's spitting fire. Like, again, don't have much time for the Labour Party, but it's not entirely replete with awful human beings. Barry Gardiner is one of the precious few Labour MPs who I have at least a modicum of time for, and he isn't wrong. If you're one of the few good people left in the Labour Party, you must be looking at this like you're absolutely crazy. You must be looking at this in exasperation, knowing that you're watching the heat death of your political party in real time because of solely Keir Starmer and Morgan McSweeney's poor judgment. And by poor judgment, I mean they're open and easily critiquable poor behaviour. They're open poor behaviour.
I think that he needs to think very hard about what is in the country's best interest and what is in his party's best interest.
It's a veiled yes.
Just say it, Barry. You know you want to say it. You know you want to say it. It's true. We can all hear it. We can hear the pin drop. We can all hear your silence, which is essentially, yes, he should resign. Because he should. Obviously, he should resign. Not just for the country's good, but for his own good at this point.
You're saying that you don't want to say it, but you're saying it with your eyes. Arlene, you led a party. What flex point is this for the leader of this one?
Well, I have to say, once you start losing your colleagues around you, and once your colleagues are saying the sort of things that were being said today, then you really have to think about whether you have the ability to lead from the front again.
Can I say I think there's other serious consequences? So Palantir, this is the spy tech firm, $260 million last month, the biggest defence budget in UK history. That was lobbied by Global Counsel, which was Peter Mandelson's lobbying group, alongside Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, close friend of Peter Mandelson. I've written to the Health Secretary today to say we have to break that contract. It also has crucial data on our healthcare system. So the idea that this defence company from the US has its fingerprints all over our healthcare system alongside Peter Mandelson is a whole range of questions that need answers urgently.
Can I ask you all, including Nick, who know the historian amongst us as well as the political journalist, to compare this, as people have done, to Profumo in just a moment? But this seems to be the Angela Rayner moment as well. Let's just look at the papers, because if we can start here with the Telegraph, which we've got, you'll see that it's the moment, according to this paper, that Rayner turns on Starmer. This was obviously the soundbite that Nick brought us at the top, because we had been waiting for the new year to see when she made her move. Prime Minister's authority in doubt. The Sun says simply that revolting. Staff strike at Andy's new home. Labour MPs force PM.
I don't think Barry Gardiner has those potential ambitions, Katie. But thank you for the £10. I do appreciate the support.
Mandy U-turn. The Guardian has the strongest version of where to predict for the Prime Minister. It's over, say Labour.
What is interesting, right, is actually in this particular interview, Zach didn't really answer the questions, but he knew the assignment, which is to get the clippable bits for social media. That's what he's there for. And you know what? Slay. Why bother treating these has-been journalists with the time of day over their inane questions that don't make any actual difference to the reality of the situation? Get your TikTok clips. Get your clips for Rook at Implausible Blog to put up on Instagram and onto Twitter. Which I believe he already has done.
MPs and the Daily Mail, Starmer in grave peril as Rayner twists the knife. Nick, first, does this strike you as the moment Angela Rayner could have held back but went straight pedal to the metal?
Just briefly, you talked about history. Maybe I've got this wrong. Wasn't it said of Sir Thomas More, his silence reverberated around Europe? And we had some very significant silence from Barry Gardiner about whether Keir Starmer should resign as Prime Minister.
Look, let me be clear. Keir Starmer as a project came about from somebody who had been the protege of Mandelson and who is now the Chief of Staff in 10 Downing Street. There's connectivity, and to use your historical analogy, the guy at the top is not the only thing here. There are barons, and when the barons begin to feel that they're under pressure, it's a very dangerous time for the Prime Minister. And there is so much that is dependent upon what Mandelson, through the Chief of Staff, then has initiated, and the people who are now in positions as ministers that have been dependent upon that whole process.
Okay.
That means this is not just one man at the top. But you're talking about an aristocracy.
Right, but
so you're not actually being clear here, Barry. I get what he's saying, though. Like, this isn't about Starmer, this is about a Politburo. He is describing a Politburo. That's the reality. There's a reason why I keep using that word. It's because it's what it is. It is a council of ministers. It is the bureaucracy at the top of the party that controls everything, a la Soviet Union. It is quite funny that they always deride the left of the Labour Party as being Stalinist, and they literally act like the Stalin Politburo, literally. Although, to be fair, this does seem more like the fall of Khrushchev rather than the death of Stalin, but whatever. Historical analogies be damned, right? But the thing is that he's not even named Morgan McSweeney here. He needs to name it, right? Like, when he's asking should Keir Starmer step down, and he talks about the project, I mean, the reality here is the project is finished. It's not just Keir Starmer the individual, because as Barry has correctly pointed out, it is bigger than Keir Starmer. It is a whole project that's all within the halls of Labour together, and the McSweeney, Mandelson cadre of people that surround Keir Starmer. Again, I mentioned them all earlier, like Holly Rigdon, people like that. These people who have the control over the levers of power, who groomed, quite frankly, Keir Starmer to be the figure that he is today, these people are all the problem, and they all need to go. It's not just the end of Starmer, it's the end of the project around him. It's the end of the Politburo. It has to be cleaned out, it has to be expunged from government. And if it isn't, if all they do is have a rotating cast of people who are still members of that Politburo, if all you're doing, right, if all you're doing is replacing Andropov with if all you're doing is replacing Andropov with Brezhnev, you're not actually going to change anything.
Within the party.
You've named the Chief of Staff in particular. Does changing Morgan McSweeney, that's who Barry's talking about, is that a way out?
No, and also I'm concerned to see reports today that Morgan McSweeney and Peter Mandelson were vetting the new Labour MPs. That means we've got Labour MPs in Parliament that are associated with this whole sordid mess. Now, that's not to say every single one of them isn't a decent person or doesn't have values at their heart, but it does raise questions about both Morgan McSweeney and Peter Mandelson and their interference in this. But ultimately, it does come back to Keir Starmer. There was a report, I believe, in the New Statesman that said Peter Mandelson, Morgan McSweeney doesn't breathe without Peter Mandelson knowing about it. So again, questions.
Yes, there's questions about that.
I mean, there is probably a stronger point that you'd make there, which is, again, you've got to talk about the history of what happened in the run-up to the election. This would be the ideal point where I think Zach should have said, well, of course Morgan McSweeney is the one who has to be implicated here. He's the person who pushed for the appointment of Peter Mandelson in the first place, and he's the one who controls the strings. It was literally reported in the Times, with Labour MPs describing Keir Starmer as having been sat in front of the DLR, i.e. a driverless train, i.e. pretending to do things when not actually in control of everything. Keir Starmer is not the one that's being implicated here. The bigger implication is on Morgan McSweeney, but again, he's being avoided from being called out specifically by name in the media because they know that if they try and call him out, they'll lose access. He is the Mandelson figure. Mandelson is out, his career is over, they can ruin him, it's fine now. Morgan McSweeney is protected because if they start doing things that he doesn't like, he'll stop talking to them and giving them access to the government, which they need for their stories. But again, McSweeney is the real problem here.
But there's also questions, and I'll be very interested to see what comes out of the papers and the emails.
Blue Sky Drinking asks, wasn't McSweeney's first job in Mandelson's compromise operation? It was. That's a very interesting point. Thank you very much for reminding me. Yeah, McSweeney's first job in the Labour Party was working on Peter Mandelson's Excalibur project, which is essentially his entire fucking spreadsheet consisting of compromise on members of the Parliamentary Labour Party so that he could, what did he describe it to Jamie Dimon? Oh yeah, likely threaten them if they ever put a foot out of line. Says something, doesn't it, about who Morgan McSweeney is.
And all of the documents that come about, because not only what Zach has mentioned about the company that Peter Mandelson was involved in, what is going on in terms of China, Russia, the Chagos Islands, dare I mention that? Does that come up? Why is there such a push to give away part of our British family? I want to know what's in those documents. So I have to say the Intelligence and Security Committee have a huge job ahead of them in terms. I thought it was absolutely ridiculous to say that they weren't going to give originally documents relating to international relations, when at the end of the day this was about appointing our ambassador to the United States. I mean, that was a ridiculous thing to try and hide away from.
Lots has been said in anger about the Chagos. No one else has said they're part of the British family, Ollie.
They are. They're the British overseas territories. They are very much part of the British family.
The Chagos Islands, Arlene, are about as much of the British family as the 6 counties are.
Oh my goodness, Paddy, you can't say that.
I can say that.
You cannot say that.
We can come back to it.
You cannot say that.
What we need to say is, what's your intel from the Labour MPs tonight?
So just very briefly, to be fair to the Labour Party on what Zach said, Joanna Baxter, who's a long-standing member of the NEC, says that it's not true that Peter Mandelson vetted the candidates. But Barry was talking about danger to the Prime Minister.
I mean, I don't believe her. I don't believe Ms. Baxter that he wasn't involved. I don't believe you. McSweeney was scrutinising the candidates, and Mandelson and McSweeney are incredibly close to each other. They have been close to each other the whole time, especially since the Hartlepool by-election. I'm sorry, no, I don't believe you, Holly.
And I do have to say, I spotted that in the chamber. So I made a point of going in for the last half an hour of the debate. Angela Rayner was sitting there, and her face and the sea of Labour MPs, they were sitting largely in silence, they were stony-faced, and they looked angry. But obviously I made a point of coming out of the debate to canvass opinion, and these are the sort of opinions I picked up, Paddy. So a minister said to me, "It's shameful, it's embarrassing." A backbencher said to me, "You could see the Prime Minister shrinking in front of our eyes. I don't see how he survives." And this is from a loyalist. This is so sad. I think power is moving irretrievably to the Labour left.
Oh. This is what's so funny. It's so... This is such an illuminating quote, because it just shows you that none of the people's concerns within the Politburo, none of the people's concerns surrounding Keir Starmer, none of the people's concerns on the Labour right more broadly are in any way about the country, or the Labour movement, or the trade unions, or ordinary people of the country, or anything like that. All they're concerned with is having power internally in the Labour Party. They're looking at the downfall of the Prime Minister. They're looking at the scandals around the Labour Party more broadly, the damage to the Labour movement, potentially, more broadly. They're looking at a scandal of which that could potentially bring down the Prime Minister and has irreparably damaged not just his internal position as Prime Minister in this country, but it's damaged his international renown as a politician, right? That's how big this scandal is, where if your Bezzy mate is Bezzy mates with Epstein because of things that were released in the Epstein files, this permanently damages you as a politician and damages us as a country on the world stage by proxy. And what are they concerned with? What are they concerned with when it comes to the fallout of what's happening here? Oh, well, this means that the bloody lefties will be in charge of the Labour Party. It's myopic. It's so unbelievably myopic and single-minded that they can look at the giant fucking mess surrounding Keir Starmer and go, oh, it's really sad that now people who believe in redistribution of wealth might be in charge of the Labour Party now. And I'm just like, these people need to be expunged from politics. They need to be gone forever. It's a rot that can only be fixed through being absolutely rooted out of politics. The Labour right are the worst people in politics, right? Even worse than the Tories. Even worse than the Tories, because at least the Tories believe all of the evil shit that they do. The Labour right do it because they think that it's politically efficacious. Honestly, they need to be expunged from politics permanently. This has to be the end of the fucking line, not just for Keir Starmer, the end of the line for McSweeney, the end of the line for Labour Together, the end of the line for Tony Blair, the end of the line for everyone related to this sordid mess of a political wing of a political party. Gone. Get rid of them forever. If you're a Labour MP watching this, you remember the Labour right, resign. Go away. The public doesn't want you. Your party doesn't want you. The rest of the members of the rest of the fucking MPs of your party that don't agree with you don't fucking want you. No one wants you. Politics is better without you being there. Go and do a job that actually contributes to society, like you pretend that you represent in Parliament that you actually don't. Because you don't represent the trade unions anymore, do you? No, you don't. You don't represent anybody other than your own political interests, and quotes like this are exact proof of that reality. Quotes like this show that you are so myopic. Quotes like this show that you're so myopic. Quotes like this show you are so myopically obsessed with your own political advancement over the interests of the people of this country, the workers of this country, and the members of your own fucking party, that you do not belong in politics. You do not deserve political office. You don't deserve my fucking public money spent on your fucking salary if this is your fucking attitude. Get out. Go away forever. No one likes you. No one wants you.
For God's sake. For God's sake. And if that is what Labour loyalists think that this is about, then where is their loyalty to? That's what I want to know.
Because
this is not a fight between right and left within the Labour Party. Yeah. It's much bigger than that, and if they don't get that, then they need to get and smell the coffee.
Because it's about judgment, Arlene. I think the point everyone here is making, because time and time again, Keir Starmer's judgment as Prime Minister has been brought into question, which under our system, the adversarial system, he has been snookered by Kemi Badenoch on where his judgment was.
Yeah, and I think that's a very fair question, and I think she was on top form today, if I may say so, in terms of how she performed in comparison to the Prime Minister, who
Thank you, Rido, for the 5 gifts. Much appreciated for the support.
Looked incredibly under.
Thank you, My Left Eye, for the raid. Welcome in, viewers. Everyone go follow at My Left Eye UK over on YouTube.
Right, so much so that his hand was shaking at one point. So.
Andrew Carter or Vicky, I believe, are the mods in chat. Can you please drop the link to my Left Eye's channel in chat so people can go and subscribe? We have 440 people watching. Everyone who's not a subscriber to My Left Eye, please go and subscribe. Barry looks like he's about to blow. I mean, I assume, Politico teacher, that he has the same opinions as I do over quotes like that, right? Like, I'm a member of the Green Party. I love the Green Party. I'm glad I'm a member. But I do miss what we had under Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party. I do miss it. I'm glad we're building something similar, but different, not the same, but something of that ilk in the Green Party now. But I'm a trade unionist. I believe in the power of trade unions being affiliated to political parties and fighting for the interests of workers through those ends. I fundamentally believe in that principle. And I do think that there needs to be a party like that. And the Labour Party have, in the last 40 years or so, becoming totally divorced from that. It's very sad. It's sad. I wish that it wasn't like this. And it's why it makes me so angry. And I'm glad that the Green Party is trying to become a party of the trade unions once again. Because we had Daniel Kebede from the NEU on the podcast today. And he was really good. I really enjoyed it. And we need to take the mantle up from where Labour have left it. Thank you for the links. Much appreciated. Mods in chat.
The man is under incredible pressure. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But I do agree with Barry that he should have been upfront around what he knew instead of having to be questioned about it in the fashion that he was.
The Starmer project disintegrated like the fucking Titan submersible. Yep, that's so. It's even more true. Can you stand the rain? That it's similar to the Titan submersible because it's collapsed with a bunch of billionaires inside it. So true. So true.
I should just say on that point of loyalty, since we've been on air, I've had a Labour MP texting me saying we need to be loyal to the Prime Minister. Too many of my colleagues, he said, are addicted to opposition. But just to continue what I picked up.
Well, no, because they're opposing conservatism, which is what Keir Starmer represents. Like, most people get elected as Labour members because they want to oppose conservatism, not appease it.
One minister said to me, we're smiling, but it's delirium.
Billionaire funded, cheaply put together bullshit. So true. And it is funny because Stockton Rush was a proven morally corrupt serial liar. God rest his soul. The stare down the camera from Barry, honestly. He's thinking what I'm thinking. Maybe I'm naive, but didn't journalists doorstep Dominic Cummings? Why not McSweeney? I mean, it's true. Again, I've said before plenty of times that I think that it's crazy that McSweeney isn't being scrutinised in the way that Cummings was.
And then another backbencher said, that was Keir's worst performance at PMQs. I don't see how he comes back from this. He is toast. Now, I began by saying the two words associated with today are he knew. One former member of the government said to me, no. The two words that should be associated with today are Morgan out. Get rid, they're saying, of Morgan McSweeney, the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, who was instrumental in that appointment. And I have to say, I've learnt tonight that Starmer loyalists have been going to the whips and saying, we've helped you, you need to help us, you need to help the Labour Party, get him out and put him in charge of Labour campaigning.
Look, I love how it's not even get rid of him from the party, it's move him to a different department. That's their idea of getting Morgan McSweeney out. But again, I've said this before, I'll say it again, there is no Keir Starmer without Morgan McSweeney. If McSweeney goes, then Starmer goes. Because Starmer doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. He has no project, he has no beliefs, he doesn't believe in anything. All of his political positions and political moves in his political project has been dictated to him by Keir Starmer. It's why I keep calling them Keith Harris and Orville, because Keir Starmer doesn't even speak without asking McSweeney what he's going to say. He is quite literally a puppet in the hands of a ventriloquist. That's the reality. So whilst they do correctly think that Morgan McSweeney is the principal person to blame here, the problem, of course, is if you get rid of him, Starmer has no one else to turn to and will also go with him too.
We're being warned against going straight to politics, but bluntly, is this sort of chaos good news for the Greens?
I really don't think it's a good thing for the country, actually. And to see, I don't doubt for a second Barry's honesty here in terms of how much rage he's feeling. And I think this is what the country is feeling. I think it's one of the rare times, actually, it's not about party politics. It's about the whole trust in the whole democratic system eroding.
If Barry wants to cross to the Greens, would you welcome
I don't think Barry does.
It's never going to happen, Barry. So you needn't bother.
Just checking, you are wearing a green badge. Well, it's a yellow badge.
Quite seriously, though, I think you learn as a politician that you have to take responsibility for decisions you make. And the idea that this is on an officer, Morgan McSweeney, no matter how powerful he is for the birds. This is on Keir Starmer.
Let me launch another line on you. Keir Starmer is a well-meaning...
Thank you for the 10 gifties, Henry VIII Fake. Again, thank you very much for the continued support. Do appreciate it. I think it's very magnanimous that Zach Polanski didn't go for the throat here. It's quite fun. I mean, I wouldn't have been this magnanimous, but hey-ho. We've already got the Twitter clips from this one. But I would have gone straight in for the jugular. I would have gone straight for the, well, we all know that Keir Starmer doesn't make his own decisions. It's been reported widely in the Times. It's Gabriel Pogrund and Henry Patrick Maguire? Sorry. It's been Gabriel Pogrund and Patrick Maguire that have been reporting on this. I almost called him Harry Maguire for a second. I mean, like, probably quite a long way, you know, to be honest, from Patrick ever playing for England. But, yeah, it was quite classy. I would have just said no. He's the DLR guy. He's the guy who said that he couldn't run a bath. That's what Angela Rayner said about Keir Starmer. They said he couldn't even run a bath, let alone a political party. All of the insiders speak with Keir Starmer. All the insiders of the party speak about Keir Starmer with only derision. With the singular thing that you hear when you get insider comments from Labour Party MPs about Keir Starmer is only derision that you hear. Because again, he believes in nothing. There is two peas in a pod. It's Keir Starmer and McSweeney.
Lawyer who fought against injustice for his career and has tried hard to catch criminals in our country. He's made a mistake. Yes. Hello, this is what happens in life. Arlene, you made one. Yeah. I haven't got time to go into it now. Yeah. But just can I put it this way to you? He did call out...
It is brutal.
Or mine. I haven't got time to go into mine. But I'm just saying, can we also say that what he's done is he called Peter Mandelson that he betrayed Britain. Yes. So he has tried as Prime Minister to own the Labour catastrophe. Do we give him credit for saying that? And do you agree it's as serious as that? Is it up there with Profumo?
I do think it's very serious, and not just for the Prime Minister or indeed his Chief of Staff.
I mean, it is true that the allegations and the revelations that are specifically regarding the revelations from the 2008 financial crisis about the leaks to Epstein about government policy, that is out of Keir Starmer's hands, obviously, but none of this recuses him from all of the stuff around the appointment that he made, given everything that was obviously known at the time and that he was asked about directly.
I think it's very serious for politics in general, because the only thing people are speaking about at the moment is Peter Mandelson and trust in politics, and I think that's bad for everybody here sitting on this panel.
I think what's got to happen now is there has to be a police investigation about exactly what Mandelson gave away as what were state secrets and confidential information, and that goes to the heart of trust in politics.
I think that's right. I'd love to add something more, but actually I think this is above politics. I think it's about making sure we're protecting our democratic institutions.
Nick, can I ask you to sum up this very tumultuous day? It does seem to have been a moment of surprising anger, not surprising to those of us who've been following, but the political class seem to have surprised themselves.
Well, Keir Starmer's authority and his position as Prime Minister has been substantially weakened today, partly because there were difficulties in the Commons, but mainly because it crystallised a feeling that he showed very, very poor judgment in this appointment. And what you saw from those stony faces, not just amongst backbenchers, amongst ministers, you just saw them standing there, is you thought, this is clearly very, very difficult, and you wonder whether he can recover his authority from today.
Thank you all very much.
No, I don't wonder whether he can recover his authority from today, because he won't. It's impossible. There is no authority left. It's all over. It's done. Finito. Career ended immediately. The question is when, not if. I've not even got to the fucking Alvarea article yet, or the bits where Mandelson talked about Jeffrey Epstein's release as Liberation Day, and they made jokes about strippers. Like, there's so much that I've just not gone into yet. Fuck me. This is S-tier adulting. The adults well and truly are back in the room, chat. It's so true. God, there was a bit and piece. I was going to watch a video from Jeremy Vine as well. There's like 429 people watching. Thank you, by the way. If you're for a first-time viewer, I welcome in you through to the No Justice stream. I get angry. I mean, you've seen. I mean, the clips that I put onto YouTube carefully curate my anger. But if you're a regular watcher of the stream, you can know I crash out significantly regularly. And if that kind of thing is of interest to you, please consider subscribing. It's free. And on top of this, you can also support the stream through gifting memberships and or super chatting, as people have done already. This stream is not possible without the kind donations from my viewers over on YouTube and when I'm on Twitch, which I will be on Thursday or Friday to cover Question Time, which has got fucking Zia Yusuf on again. So yeah, if you want to support the stream and you want to help us keep going, gifts to help boost the stream and the algorithm, spread the love around. If you're a member, by the way, if you can become a member on YouTube for 99p, it is cheaper than a can of Red Stripe. That gives you access to my archive live streams and my emotes in chat, which I'm sure the lovely people here will show you the excellent emotes that you get access to by becoming a member should you wish to. I am seeing white names in chat. I'm sure you can spare 99p to at least console me for the rage that I feel in my heart for the reality of British politics in 2026. Thank you, Henry VIII, again for 10 more gifties. Can someone else gift me? I feel bad that Henry VIII gives me so much money now. If anyone else would rather gift in their stead, that would also be welcome. But again, I will never say no to more money. So thank you very much for your generosity, Henry. That's incredibly generous of you to support the stream today. Remember when Barry whistled the red flag at conference? Good times. It feels like they're well in the rearview mirror now, doesn't it? If Keith makes it past T20 finals day, I'll be amazed. So true. Hey, Charlie with a membership. Thank you. I should watch Corbyn's speech that he did in Parliament. Let's do that. Should we?
The question
cheer
is,
ourselves up? Should we cheer ourselves up with the Corbmeister? Let's go.
Fundamentally, one for the Prime Minister, and it's a bit odd that he's not here for the debate. It's a bit odd that he hasn't spoken in the debate. It's a bit odd that all he's done is said what he did today at Prime Minister's Question Time. I cannot believe that when he was about to appoint...
Thank you, Pippa Tandy, for the 20 Australian. Just a reminder to come out to protest Herzog's visit to Australia next week. Very good point. Oh, that's another thing that Keir Starmer did. He invited one of the genocide heirs of Israel, i.e. the president of Isaac Herzog, who stated there were no innocent people in Gaza. He invited that guy to number 10 Downing Street. Just a guy complicit in genocide. Nothing. No biggie. No biggie, chat. Just another upstanding, decent man in politics, Keir Starmer. Thank you, Captain Coconut, for the £5. For your information, Helena tends to put her hands on her head when she's about to blow. I do this. I do this very frequently before I have before I crash out.
Peter Mandelson as the ambassador to Washington, he wasn't made fully aware of all of Peter Mandelson's record. He would have known the number of times Peter Mandelson was forced to resign, even from the Tony Blair government, because of his behaviour. He would have known all of that. He would have known Mandelson's record as an EU commissioner. He would have known Mandelson's record of an interesting relationship with global dealers in minerals and many other things. He would have known all of that, and yet he still went ahead, apparently despite Foreign Office and other advice, to appoint Mandelson as the ambassador to Washington. What a shame, what a disgrace, and what an appalling appointment to make. And we still don't even know if Mandelson is still being paid by the Foreign Office for that. And so I think today we've got to be very stern and very clear about this. There needs to be the fullest possible inquiry into all of this. Parliament is not competent to undertake this inquiry. The Cabinet Secretary is not competent. The civil service machine is not competent, because they've all been ensnared into this gilded, friendly web of Mandelson, the business contacts, the political contacts, the social contacts, under which favours were done, contracts apparently awarded, this ghastly company Palantir trying to get hold of our National Health Service, apparently at the behest of Mandelson and others. None of us here are competent to have that inquiry. That's why I intervened, and I thank those members that did give way earlier on how the inquiry should be conducted. I think it has to be on the basis of something judicially led, independent, and for the most part in the public eye. The member for Leeds East made a wonderful and very, very powerful speech, and I thank him for the reference he made to what Mandelson said and did about me when I was leader of the opposition.
Miliband also refused to have Mandelson in government. I mean, I'm not surprised, right? Ed Miliband is like a normal human being. It's interesting, again, the one who's the most competent as a minister is also the one who's most competent as a political actor as well. It's a shame he couldn't eat a bacon sandwich, eh? And a shame he was leader at the time when interest rates were low. Thank you for the £3, Ian Webster. Appreciate the support.
And leader of the Labour Party, I can just confirm to the House, under my leadership, Mandelson had no role, no influence and no part to play, because I do not trust the man, I do not believe the man, and we need to make that very, very clear, because his role in British politics has been basically malign, undermining and essentially a very corrupting influence altogether.
Again, and that's why they had to stop Jeremy Corbyn. This is why they would never have let Jeremy Corbyn become Prime Minister, because he is a man who cannot be bought. He is a man who cannot be corrupted. He is a man who would not allow for the gravy train of corruption that Peter Mandelson exemplified in British politics to continue. He would have demanded probity in public office, the kind of thing that Mandelson and his fellows abhor, and he would have made sure there would have been no access for the kind of sleazy and slimy individuals like Mandelson and what they wanted in terms of how government would have been enacted at the time. A Jeremy Corbyn premiership would not have allowed someone like Mandelson access to the kind of documentation that he leaked to Jeffrey Epstein. It's as simple as that.
And so when we look at our politics, we need to look at the role that big money plays, the role that patronage plays, the role that turning a blind eye to crime plays, because that is what we end up with, the national embarrassment of Mandelson being the ambassador to Washington, apparently on the basis that it was a risk worth taking in order to please Donald Trump. Epstein was very, very powerful and very, very wealthy. And there are lots of people all around the world that were dragged into this ghastly web based on dishonesty, based on lies, based on corruption and based on patronage. It's up to us as MPs, to fess up to what's happened and make sure there is a genuinely open, independent inquiry into all of this, and we look ourselves in the mirror about the standards of democracy we have in our society. Let's have the open...
James Corbs has shat the bed regarding your party. We have the Greens now anyway, so, you know, no harm, no foul. And it just seemed to be that your party movement seems to be like a holding pen for the politically less pragmatic, shall we say? I'll be diplomatic about it.
Public inquiry that's necessary. Let's have the understanding that we are going to turn the page on the era of patronage, of the close relationship between commercial pressure groups and lobbying in the Lords and here and all around the media in our society, and really strive to build that open, fair, democratic society that we should all believe in. Those that suffered in order to gain universal suffrage and democracy didn't do that so we could develop a corrupt political system. They did it because they wanted an open, democratic, accountable system that worked for the benefit of the poorest in our society as well as everybody else. So let's pass that motion today. No deals. Pass the motion. Inquire with real seriousness into the horror show that we've heard about.
Thank you, Jenny Jordan, for the £5. Did you see Wes's husband is trying to hide his old job for Mandy? The Labour Right Watch on Blue Sky. I have not seen that, but I wouldn't be surprised. Again, they're all just kind of... They've all got their snouts in the trough. They're all implicated in this. Because, again, it's one big web of Labour Right chuckle fucks, isn't it? That's the reality. But again, Jeremy Corbyn makes an excellent point there, which exactly goes back to the Lenin quote from before about democracy for the rich is the reality of democracy under capitalism, right? And that's the problem, is that it always infects it. Wealth always infects democracy, when wealth is what buys you power, which is the reality of capitalism. Thank you, Casey, for another £2 super chat. Base Jeremy well said. I agree. Absolutely. What an absolute legend. We've still got 400 viewers at midnight. Well, welcome in, everybody. I appreciate that everyone has joined us tonight to watch me lose my fucking mind. Ed Balls wishes Epstein liked him. So true. Maybe we'll have to go. Maybe I'll go for the Alva Rea article on Novara Media tomorrow. This is a good article. I mean, there's a really great clip actually from 2017 of Bernie Sanders looking through a Republican tax cut bill under Donald Trump, going, "It appears here there's a tax break specifically for hedge fund bankers who reside in the U.S. Virgin Islands." That was a terrible impression. I do apologize, chat. But there's a Bernie Sanders speech where he specifically calls out a Republican tax proposal that gives a very specific tax break to hedge fund managers who live in the US Virgin Islands, which is described in the Epstein files as a tax cut for Jeffrey Epstein. Literally, Larry Summers messages Jeffrey Epstein going, is this clip of Bernie Sanders speaking referring to a tax cut that's specifically been crafted for Jeffrey Epstein? And that's so fucking funny to me. That guy knew. Again, the one thing that you always hear in the Epstein files is that they hated Corbyn and they hated Sanders, and there's a good reason. Probably have some resignations to cover on Thursday. I hope so. Would like to see as Prime Minister. I mean, Zach Polanski, but like, if there's someone from the Labour Party to replace Keir Starmer, then probably just has to be Rayner. Surely Rayner is the only person who can justify that, who can be a justified replacement at this point. Well, how many people watching are people who've accidentally left their stream on and fallen asleep? What's the connection between Epstein and the UK arms deal? I'm not sure. There was there's got a connection with Palantir specifically, but I mean, none of us trust Rayner, but she's the only one who makes sense now. Well, I'm starting to yawn now anyway, because it's how late it is. I've got to be up early for fucking Novara Media tomorrow as well. Ugh. I'm enjoying the stream, chat. We sit and chat for another half an hour if you want. Been editing a photo video from last weekend, just a video of a scene of waterfall. That's cute. I like that. Boogies have Rayner as next PM. I think that's a good shout now. There's no way that West Streeting wins a leadership contest. Thank you, Ruth, for the £2. Appreciate the omission of ads. No ads. It's good. Thank you for the kind words. Yeah, Rhaena is basically, she's basically representative of the Burnham faction. I know she's not like a member of mainstream because, of course, that would have made her less likely to have been part of the inner ring, but she represents that kind of politics, yeah. No worries, I appreciate you, Science Lab. Thank you for the kind words. Right, okay, right. I've yawned like twice in the space of 10 minutes, right? We'll probably have to end it there. I appreciate everyone for joining in today. I'm sorry I couldn't go on longer. There are so many of you watching, and I really appreciate the everyone's been watching today, and we've had so many people enjoy the content. I will leave this full stream up without a paywall, so that everyone can watch it, even without being a member, because clearly this video has garnered interest, so I will make sure that the VOD is available for everyone to watch, even who aren't members, so people can watch, because it's clearly doing algorithmically very well, so I'll leave that up. I'll send you all over into the Noisy Immigrant over on YouTube, who will be discussing more Epstein Files revelations. Thank you everyone for joining. Make sure, of course, if you want to support the channel, the best way to support the channel is to become a patron. That's patreon.com/NoJusticeMTG. If you want to sign up to be a long-term supporter of the channel, Patreon is the best place to do it. If you can consider doing that, there's no extra content on Patreon. None of the actual content is really paywall. It's just it's good algorithmically to have the live streams behind the membership. So if you Patreon is only used as a way of being able to transfer money from you to me. I do not do special Patreon content. Everyone gets all the free stuff that I stream on live on YouTube and on Twitch sometimes as well. If you would like to support, patreon.com/NoJusticeMTG. If a mod can drop the link in chat, it'd be very much appreciated. Thank you very much. I'll be back on Novara Media tomorrow for a Novara Live at 6 p.m. That's youtube.com/Novara Media. If you want to come see me speak in a more official capacity rather than my shouty, ranty streams, you can do so there. I'll be back then potentially on Thursday evening or Friday afternoon on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/NoJusticeMTG for more question time, which has got Emma Reynolds, it's got Munira Wilson, it's got Zia Yusuf, it's got Ollie from Politics Joe and Now the New Statesman, and it's got someone else, a Tory, who I've never heard of. So we're watching that, hopefully with Kevin, either Thursday night or Friday afternoon. Take care, stay safe. Free Palestine, free Kurdistan, free Sudan, all the good stuff we want to see in the world. Take care, I'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.